After weeks of voting, everything has come to this. You all chose for us to read Batman by Morrison during Morrison month, and I, for one, could not be any happier. This is the best Thanksgiving gift you could have given to me because this is my favorite run of all time. I have been waiting to talk about this for the longest, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you think Morrison had a lot to say about Batman during their run, you might as well get ready for a 2 hour Sean soapbox because I have a lot to say about Grant's run on Batman. Can't wait to dig into it. There were three Ghosts of Batman. We've got three comics pals here today. We've got Marco.
What's up, Zur-En-Arrh dogs?
We've got Tyler.
So you said Thanksgiving gift. Are we supposed to be giving gifts out on Thanksgiving? Have I been doing it wrong this whole time?
Sean got good eats. That's all it is.
Here's
You're
a
a
blanket.
bad friend. If you're not giving people gifts during Thanksgiving, that's what you do. And of course, I'm Sean. Thank you for being with us, whether you are here live or in the future. Huge shout out to you if you voted for this or any of the other options, or nominated any of the books. We had so many nominations for Grant Morrison month. It's really cool to see the excitement level that you guys had around this writer and their slate of incredible stories. We're going to talk a little bit later about the book club and what you can expect for December. So we'll get into that. But again, today we are here to talk about if not generally regarded as the best modern Batman run, certainly in a conversation between about two books. It's really this or Scott and Greg's Batman stuff.
For the modern era, that sounds about right. Yeah, like looking back on things, those are the ones that I feel like represent the greatest markers for, oh, if you're going to read these are the pinnacles.
Yeah.
It's
Do you guys go ahead?
No, go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
Do you guys have a familiarity with this series prior to now?
So, what is it? Batman 6, the Alex Ross blue RIP cover, the first RIP Batman. That was the first issue of Batman I ever bought.
No way.
Yeah, I have it somewhere. It's in a long box somewhere, along with most of the run, and that was my first, just straight Batman issue that I ever bought in a floppy. And that is where I jumped in. Everyone talks about jumping on points. That was my jumping on point. Honestly, that might have been my jumping on point for DC in terms of floppies. If I'm being completely honest at the time, I was a Marvel head through and through. But there was a hype around Batman RIP that at the time was just hard to ignore. And it was like, it's freaking Batman. Of course I want to read a Batman book. I just wasn't really sure where I can kind of slot in. So I figured, new big event, new big arc. I can jump into this. And boy, was I confused. and rereading this, I'm like, oh man, I jumped in on the deep end for real.
Yeah.
But even at the time, I remember really enjoying it. It was the stuff we would talk about at the shop. I would talk about it in high school. I had a comic book club that I was a part of in high school at the time. And I remember us talking about this book because a lot of the people in it were DC heads. So this holds a special place in my fandom. But I have not read it again till now.
Nice.
I have reread a lot of the Batman and Robin stuff and some of the Batman Inc. stuff, but I've never read pre-Final Crisis Morrison Batman until now. And honestly, some of the stuff was new to me as well. Black Glove and most of Batman and Son I never read, so this was new to me.
This is completely new to me. I've the most I've ever run is read are like 2 one-off issues because Sean had asked me to read, and that's all I've known, and maybe the first volume or two of Batman and Robin. And outside of that, I've always just heard of this as being, a a special run, a special book, and mostly through the rest of the comics community. It's so well regarded that it felt like it's one of those gaps for me, and so I'm really appreciative that I got to read it because I filled in a gap, I plugged a hole, and we'll get into it. But I thought this was great. There are so many individual pieces that I can call out as memorable, and I think it leaves. I mean, obviously, it leaves a lasting mark on the character, because even the stuff that we've seen most recently with Chip Zdarsky pulls from this. So that's how you know that this has weight and consequences, and I enjoyed that in comics.
Well, I don't need to get into my history with this. You guys, if you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you know that this was a very, very important book for me as a reader. And I'll talk a little more about that as we go along. I think most people who have read this would say, similar to what Marco said, that there are stakes and there are weight and it is heady and there's a lot of stuff baked in. And it's one of those runs where the more times you read it, the more you get out of it. I've been reading this run for the last 17 years because I started reading it, in 2007, and I've read it it's my most reread run of all time. I probably read it like 5 times through, and I've read pieces of it even more than that.
What sparks your rereads? Just an itch, or something you like? You're reading Batman and not liking it, or it's just you just you take a glance at your shelf and you're like, I should do that again.
It's just the good shit. It's just the good shit. When I'm in the mood, I go back.
Oh, okay. You're not saying you're reading it while you're taking a good shit. It's like a bathroom companion piece. That's a little too big for a bathroom companion piece.
Flo Dameron with the 4.99, a modern run that gets better every time you read it. Couldn't agree more.
I can
Could
see
not
that
agree more.
with Morrison being the writer that they are. I think this has, and I'm sure like there were issues here that I went back to because I'm like, okay, surely I missed something. Well, yeah, well, there's a few there that I think deserved a reread.
So this run starts in 2006 for the purposes of what we will be discussing here because we don't get into Batman and Robin or Batman Inc. This is really just the first omnibus worth of stories. So you're looking at, I think our time with it ends around 2009, 2010, and it was quite a ride to be there as it was all coming out. And Morrison's run on Batman really doesn't start with what is collected here. It doesn't start with their first issue of Batman proper, not even by a long shot. In fact, I think the only way to understand this run, and part of my job is to help everybody understand what happens here, because I don't think it's really possible to read this once or twice and get it. I think it's a lot denser than that. I personally have read a lot of what other people have had to say to understand it. And again, I think you really have to be willing to go to the past to understand the present and the future. So, Grant Morrison's time on Batman really starts with Arkham Asylum and Gothic. And Arkham Asylum is like a very like early look at it. That's kind of Morrison just saying, "Hey, Batman's a weird character. I take LSD. Let's see what I get out of it." Right. But then you move on to Gothic, and Gothic is, I think it's a Legends of the Dark Knight story that they then collected. But it's a story in which Batman faces off against a criminal who appears to be in some way immortal or has an extended life period and made a pact with the devil. It goes a lot into Bruce's history with religion, and it asks the idea, if there is a God, is there a devil? And if there is a devil, what is the shape of it?
Hmm.
And if there is a devil, is that Batman's ultimate opposition? That is a very, very important thing to have in your mind as you read this entire run. because it is clearly the essential question that Grant Morrison is posing. It's the ultimate good versus the ultimate evil, and you can see that play out in many ways throughout this run. I wanted to go back a ways and read some words from Grant themselves, because obviously a lot of people have asked, Grant about the impetus of this run.
Sean, I
So,
ask that you do this in a Scottish accent, please.
oh boy,
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh,
I'm
good
just joking.
start. Good start.
that will not be happening. But so here we go. The original pitch was for 15 issues, winding up with Batman RIP, but something happened along the way, and as I was researching his rich history, I became fascinated by the idea that every Batman story was in some way true and biographical. From the savage, young, pulp-flavored, weird figure of the dark of his early years, through the smiling paternal figure of the 40s and the proto-psychedelic crusader of the 50s, the superhero detective of the 60s, the hairy-chested, globe-trotting adventurer of the 70s, to the brutally physical vigilante of the 80s and the snarling, paranoid soldier of the 90s. By taking his entire publishing history as the story of his life, I was able to approach Batman from a different angle, and the multifaceted character that was revealed became the subject of my story. What would such a man be like realistically? This was a man who had saved countless lives, faced innumerable perils, and even prevented the destruction of the world itself. This was a master of martial arts, meditation, deduction, yoga, and big business. This was a man who had tamed and mastered his demons and turned personal tragedy into a relentless humanitarian crusade. Taking that man seriously meant I had to throw out a few of the accepted ideas about Batman as a semi unhinged, essentially humorous loner struggling with rage and guilt. The totality of his history and accomplishments made that portrayal seem limited and unconvincing. So instead, my Batman was a true superhero at the height of his powers and the peak of his abilities, surrounded by a network of friends and associates, all of whom had been inspired by his lead.
Interesting.
To me, that is a very self aware and reflective, sober quote from Morrison that lays out the entire idea of this run. Marco, you said it was interesting. Was there anything that you got out of that particular quote?
It felt like this was in particular, the moment where you said this was no longer somebody who was dealing with hate and anger and guilt. It sounds like this was a person who has moved on beyond that, regardless of whether or not that is his origin, Batman. And so now that he has moved on past that, he has had all these experiences that have filled out who Batman is as a person or vigilante or superhero. Like the there is no need to tie it back to this pain, as much as there is to tie it to the future of, let's say, Gotham or do-gooding, that kind of stuff.
In reading that, it really made me think about the two issues, I guess, towards the tail end of what we read, the Final Crisis issues, which we'll get to. But, Batman being a sum of all of his parts throughout all of his iterations, and it all kind of being one and the same, but also making Batman even more than just the character at that point, which then, we don't get to it in this, but leads into Dick Grayson becoming Batman. So yeah, that's pretty poignant for at least the third of Morrison's run that we read. It's essentially the third, the first third. So yeah, definitely.
I would argue, Tyler, that those themes of Batman as a symbol and an idea and something that can be replicated are all over this first third. It's a very core concept to what is being done here. It's just not as in your face as it becomes later on, especially
Hmm.
when you get to Batman Inc.
Sure, even when we like early on with the three ghosts of Batman, they're representations of that.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, oh, oof. Boy, oh boy, I can't wait to talk about them. Um, So there are some things in that quote though that help to establish the kind of Batman that we are dealing with. And I think it's critical to understand that, in my opinion, this version of Batman is an absolute rejection of Frank Miller's interpretation of the character, the interpretation that would go on to inspire the character for the decade plus after The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One. So it's this particular bit. Taking that man seriously meant I had to throw out a few of the concepts, or rather, a few of the accepted ideas about Batman as a semi unhinged, essentially humorless loner struggling with rage and guilt. So that is the version of Batman that we are confronted by often after Frank Miller's interpretation. This is a post comics code, I want to say, yeah, post crisis version of Batman who is angrier, who has more rage in him, who then becomes paranoid and untrusting of people. That is not Morrison's version of Batman whatsoever. Morrison's version of Batman is trusting of his closest allies. He does keep certain things close to the chest, but he does have people that he relies on and believes in. It shows that he is willing to work with people, even people who aren't on his level, with the Club of Heroes. It shows that he is super competent. He's not a man on the edge. He's a man very firmly planted on the ground, even though he is the absolute perfection of humanity. And that is not the same as Frank's at all.
Yeah, Frank's is a little more violent, a little bit more, I think, uh, jaded. This is not a Batman who is jaded, who has reached a point of, well, I don't care as long as the things get done. He still has a drive. He wants to do good. He wants to do better for people, and I think that's at the core of this Batman is he wants to push forward uh the rest of everyone else in this universe to do well.
Frank Miller's Batman's a reactionary
Sure.
of what it is, and that is somehow sometimes how Frank Miller thinks. And I think this Bruce is a planner. This Bruce is um, the idea that he will ever stop being Batman does not compute. It is a necessity that will evolve through time. Um, Whereas Frank's existed in a world where a world maybe didn't need a Batman, and now, or it really needed one. It's like there could be an end for that Batman. I feel like Grant's idea of Batman is ever present, almost. Even though we're dealing with a man without powers, it's the god idea that Grant brings up in like Super Gods. Like these are myths, and they are gods in a way, and Batman is sort of that. Um, I Do you think, Sean, that and I don't want to get out of your script that you have here, but do you think that the rejection of the types of Batman that you're talking about, like post Miller, is represented in the Three Ghosts?
Oh, of course.
Okay, yeah. See,
Absolutely. They are all that.
yeah.
They're all
One of
that.
them is like, oh, I've seen all those Batman and '90s comics I don't read. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, um, the most important thing going into Morrison's run on Batman that actually is on the page that you need to know is that during the New 52, Morrison was one of the writers on that weekly event, that had writers like Rucka and Wade and Morrison and Johns. And in it, Morrison handled a piece in which Batman goes to Nanda Parbat and does a Dogal ritual that sees him essentially in isolation for 40 some odd days or whatever it is. And this version of Batman that we get is the one that essentially immediately came out of that. And it is observing the way that he is now essentially a resurrection for the post Infinite Crisis version of Batman. One that is super sane, extremely capable and confident, and near godlike in his ability to be prepared and aware and, you know, the ass kicking. And that, go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, I like that moment of one Nanda Parbat, popped off for me.
You dead man
Was,
mark.
yeah. I was like, oh shit, okay, which makes sense, you know. I get that. And that was the part that for me was a little again he Grant doesn't handhold, so I just had to accept that fact of like, okay, this was a post that event, whether or not I read that event or that moment, I could understand the goal through that, and it was like 10 days initially, and that's how long it took for him to create the the alternate person, and then it was like 40 days. There was something there, but yeah, popped off hard for that. That was cool.
That information takes us into the beginning of the run, and that kicks off in earnest with a Joker appearance. You know, the first thing we see is the Joker is attacking Gotham, and you know it's typical shit. You know, he's got kids on a roped up on a helicopter or Joker copter, and he thinks he's defeated the Batman, and he's in his glory, and then he gets shot in the face.
Love that.
I
Love the goofy copter. Love the, oh, you're just gonna steal these kids from the local orphanage. And the first thought there was, okay, this is the wacky version of Joker, who is dastardly, right? And confronted by, and I thought that was weird. Confronted initially by the reality of a gun, a weapon, and I was confused by that because even in the pages or in the art there are two individuals, and I was, yeah, it sets up a good mystery, and I love that that's how quickly we got to Joker, because he plays the long game for down the line, and he says something poignant about Joker, which we'll get into as we develop this.
I appreciate. I'll be honest. The first, I guess those issues would that have been collected in Batman and Son? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. That first book I wasn't the hottest on. It was my first read through.
Yeah.
But I did like how Grant pretty much starts their run with, "Hey, Batman, Joker," and I'm ending it right away, or at least ending what you expect right away. I'm starting with the most recognizable dynamic, Batman versus Joker, and I'm ending it by shooting him in the face in the most unexpected way. I thought it was a real impressive thing to do for your first issue.
Yep.
And then having read all the way through RIP, I can see like, oh, this is the plan all along, and I think it's a good bookend for the beginning of this first omnibus and towards the end of it. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about this run that requires it demands multiple readings, because what Tyler just said about the idea that the run starts by ending or giving you what you would expect to sort of be the thing that happens later on, Batman versus the Joker, and putting that away in the beginning is actually really the start. It really is the start of their dynamic, and it's the start of this run, because we know that wasn't Batman at all. That was one of these three ghosts of Batman. The reason why Joker reacts that way to me is two-sided. On one hand, it's, wait, you're not supposed to shoot me. What are you doing? You're breaking the rules. But on the other end of it, it's also to me an acknowledgement, oh, the rules have changed. This Joker, for me, represents an earlier version of the Joker who is now confronted by the change in Batman, the Frank Millerization of Batman, and now Joker has to undergo his own change to match this new Batman that he has encountered.
Could we linger on that for a second? Because
Please.
I was confused that if that was one of the ghosts of Batman, because there's a moment in the book where they mentioned that it was another police officer who was disguised, and they were that was one of the people who had betrayed the police force, like later on in the run. I guess I didn't read it in that moment as it being one of those ghosts. After I reread the first issue after finishing, I just thought it was the random police officer that we talk about later.
It's one of the ghosts. There's that, I don't know which issue it's in. It might be the Son of Batman issue, the Damian one. But there's that spread where you can see the three ghosts. And the
Right.
third one's kind of, like you have to unlock that character yet, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You have I think Braco was the big dude, and then you have Gun Batman, which is shown there. Yeah, so he's the first ghost that we see.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and this first issue is really interesting to me because outside of that early sequence that we just described with the Joker versus this, fake Batman, there's no action to speak of. It is a very low key issue that simply establishes what's going on. It smacks of confidence, because
Yeah.
Grant isn't interested in delivering you action for the sake of it. They know they have a plan in place, and it's really a lot of table setting. And it's giving you an idea of like, oh, hey, wow. The biggest thing here is that all of a sudden, Bruce Wayne, this character who, moonlights as a playboy, philanthropist, but is really Batman. Oh shit, he's got a son. This is the first time we get introduced to Damian. That's the big headline of this issue.
And I had never read it. Having read like this might be the only Damian I've never read, and it might be the only Damian that exists that I haven't read. I've read so much Damian, probably every major book that he's been in since, but I never read his origin. So it was kind of refreshing to see it, even though I don't think the character of Damian Wayne was fully developed at this point just yet. I mean, it was in its infancy, literally.
Hmm.
But I think Morrison towards later in his in their run, Damian becomes more fully fledged. But I thought it was an interesting introduction to the character.
Yeah.
It's a
Cool.
surprise for us and Bruce.
Which is good. I think you keep the reader in suspense, and you shade it out at the back end, but all you get is the notion of his father. This is your father. I loved the moment where they have him held up against the wall. They have him pinned, and then Damien is up there with the sword, just kind of like facing him. So, oh, I thought you were taller.
Yeah, it's
Love that.
yeah.
Love that.
I want to talk about the second issue as well, because this issue is this issue's insane. So Andy Kubert is on the art for this first arc, and man, just incredibly stellar comic book art. So to me, this issue is Morrison and Kubert showing their ass, just point blank. We get introduced to Jezebel Jet, and this issue establishes the idea that you have to look at the comic and not just read it. You have to look at the art. There is so much shit happening in the pages, in the background. And if you pay attention here, this issue will teach you how to read the rest of the series, including the first issue, which everybody who reads this the first time around misses the very obvious clues that will matter a lot more later. So let's look at the very first page of this issue where you get introduced to Jezebel Jet and Bruce sees her. In the background, right behind her, is the pop art because they're at like a gala event. The pop art is a comic book character saying, wow. And that is acting as the sound effects for this scene. And everything that happens, all the sound effects that would be required for this whole issue, everything that takes place in the gala is represented by the art in the background. It's so fucking cool. It's so cool.
I love the moments of the blams, the kapows, and yeah, obviously it plays on that like modernist uh art style, and but incorporating that into the backgrounds, into the sound effects, I thought was great. Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed about this was just how much Kubert is really working on these things. Um, and I also really like that he's Bruce Wayne is is a womanizer. He's a playboy,
He's kind of an
and
ass. Yeah.
a little bit, but
But it's an
like
act. And
but
that's the thing.
act right. It's an act, and but I like that. I feel like that's so lost nowadays, where I don't see that kind of interaction with him with other people in that way. He doesn't, he doesn't have the starlet on his arm. He doesn't have, he's not away in Italy on a yacht with three models or something, and that feels so quintessential to the mask of Bruce Wayne that I love that that was the second issue because it's a re-inclusion of that, and that those become characters down the line that play into things, which I think is important.
So two things here. I did like the comic pop art in the background. It
Yeah.
felt like a real fuck you to Roy Lichtenstein.
Yep.
who stole comic art to make pop art, and now it seems like a reclaiming of the stolen art to put it back in comics. So I was like, all right, fuck yeah, let's use that within comics. I thought that was a fun thing to do, and knowing Morrison's love for like modern art or relatively modern art in the last 100 years or so, that they worked on in Doom Patrol. I was like, fuck yeah, okay, that's really cool.
Yep.
And you're right, the Bruce Wayne bits were almost jarring for me. Like in modern comics, Bruce Wayne, all he gets to do as Bruce Wayne is boardroom stuff. So seeing him kind of be a jet setter for once, felt it felt new, which shouldn't be the case because like
Yeah.
this is like the Bruce Wayne that I grew up with in like movies. This was Val Kilmer talking to Nicole Kidman. You just don't get that anymore. So that was a little refreshing, even though he was kind of an ass. But I guess that's part of the act.
So I think across the board, it's worth acknowledging that the art of the um the art of the secret identity is one that is lost in modern comics. Modern
Yep.
superhero comics just don't have any care or time for the secret identity. And Batman as a character, Bruce Wayne is a character that suffers a lot for that. But the other thing that I wanted to throw out there is that Bruce's behavior here is in line with the James Bondish kind of character that Bruce did become in the comics, to be sure. And it's what you would expect a rich person to be like. That is extremely important for later. That Bruce's behavior is exactly what you would think a real rich snob would be like, but it's not who he really is. It's a mask. Later on, we'll meet some other people who are actually really like this, and we'll see how that plays into things more down the road.
Oh, that's a great call out. Yeah, you have a comparison point.
Yep.
Dang.
Blur Jose says, "Holy crap! I have read this whole run 3 times and never noticed the pop art fitting the scenes, dude. I have so many things to say to you that will hopefully elicit that reaction I'm bursting at the seams. There's so much stuff like that.
Well, even the whole art gallery is almost like a nega Batcave in a way.
Yep, yep,
So
Oh.
much so you even have
exactly.
that kaiju that's upside down. It's the reverse of
Yep.
it. So it's the alternate reality it's the alternate side of Batman, which is Bruce Wayne. So this was his, I guess, safe space as Bruce Wayne, and that's being in front of everyone, in the light, in front of all these crowds, 3 women around his arm. This is Bruce Wayne's Batcave rather than Batman's Batcave. I thought that was a fun bit.
Mm.
And then it gets invaded by bats too, which is like, all right, this is clearly what they're going for.
There's a line I love so much. Bruce says he's staring at a piece of art allegedly that is it's a bucket slanted downwards with all
Oh
the
yeah.
paint spilling out of it, and he says, "There's a message here somewhere. I know if I just stare hard enough." And it's so funny because Bruce is sort of being tongue in cheek right there, but if you actually do what he says, you'll get a lot out of this series.
That's
It's
art in
very cool.
general. And we stayed long enough with that issue. He winds up using that piece of art as weaponry. So we stared
Yep.
hard enough, long enough at it, and it became the art. So
It's this is such a fantastic. And then you get a little bit later, we get the man bats, the ninja man bats. Highly controversial. There are a lot of people who
really,
despise the ninja man bats.
what?
Um, yeah, a
How?
lot of people.
How?
I didn't like them when I first read this because I didn't understand the point. The point is that this is all supposed to be insanely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Grant does not want you to think about Bruce Wayne and the adventures of Batman as hyper serious, as highbrow, as anything like that. There are ninja man bats. He's gonna get in a rocket ship later. This shit's nuts.
Well, even though maybe I'm overthinking this, but a lot of this book is Batman having to look at reflections of himself, and what's literally the reflection of Batman, man bat by word. So of course you need to have that in this as well. But also,
Yeah.
man bats with swords are cool. So it kind of can work on multiple levels.
Like from the start, again from that Joker moment, right? We know that Morrison is willing to go to goofy places uh to experiences that for some people might feel antiquated or even cheesy, gimmicky, but that made sense. That made sense because of that opening.
again, it's like Silver Age wackiness.
Right.
This is supposed to make you feel like Silver Age comics, and Morrison understands that a lot of that type of stuff was what was going on. But I can't have this chance to talk about this comic and not discuss this piece in issue 2. When Batman is fighting the Man-Bats, if you go to page 49, there's a moment where he punches one of the Man-Bats in the face, and the pop art behind him says ouch. But then there's an awesome sequence in the panel just below that where Batman now realizes, okay, there's 4 more. I need to take them out by using my grappling hook. Behind him, the pop art says, just a little closer. Then the next panel is a zoom, and it says, just a little closer. Now Batman has pulled out the grappling gun. Just a little closer. You turn the page. Now it's 4 long panels on the whole page. The first one is Batman shooting the grappling hook at the ninja Man-Bat who's trying to steal a person. It says, the pop art says blam as it comes out, as the hook comes out. The next panel, he's hooked onto the Man-Bat, blam again. Then he's pulling, and then it goes down to the Man-Bat actually being tugged down to the ground. It's just such an awesome sequence. Like, that's comics.
My favorite part about that ouch painting is earlier on in the same issue, we see it in a panel where Batman says, "Oh, I don't collect comic book art. It's too highbrow for me." The ouch was for the creators in a way, so they're using that ouch in multiple layers in the same issue. Yeah, it's fun.
Just a tremendous, tremendous issue. And, again, this is only 2 issues deep, and we are seeing not only, to me, great, snappy, to the point dialogue, which is one of my favorite Morrison strengths, is that when Morrison isn't doing one of their like multiversity type super heady books, they know how to write that snappy, quick, fun, witty, interesting dialogue, and that is all over this, especially this first arc.
That issue, the art gallery issue, felt the most like Doom Patrol Morrison to me.
Mm.
It was playing on multiple levels, but not taking itself seriously.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's the point, is that this run isn't, you're not intended to take it super serious. Like, this issue gives us, our James Bond in Batman, his Bond girl, his new Bond girl in Jezebel Jet, his former flame in Talia al Ghul. He's got a surprise son, a freaking rocket ship. It's just insanity. At the end of this issue and into the next one, Damian enters the fray in earnest. Batman meets Damian, then in the next one he meets Tim and Alfred, and he's immediately a nuisance. A lot of people do not like Damian in the first few years of his existence. Really, it wasn't until Batman and Son that I remember people starting to turn the corner on Damian.
People started turning the corner on Damian when they can start hating John Kent. That's the timing, it seems.
No, not at all.
But yeah, I liked it in this. I liked Talia a lot in this too. I was reading Talia's bits and I was like, "Oh, I kind of want that kind of relationship
Oh my
going
God.
forward." You
Well, it plays into that again, the over the top of Talia. She's a goofy supervillain, right? Oh, my love, like I've trapped you now, and now we'll forever be married. It feels like some spirit shit, like really goofy with the femme fatales. And I can understand how people would be upset or maybe don't like this version of Damien. I thought out the gate it made sense. He's angry. He's disrespectful. He needs discipline. He was allowed to do whatever he wanted. He's a little shit. He's a little shit, and now he's been tossed off to the side to be someone else's problem. Obviously, his mom loves him, but she's not thinking about him. She's thinking about herself and how that relates back to Bruce, not about Damien. And he feels that. He understands that, but he's trying to make his family, his mother, and now his father happy to some degree, and so he's gonna burst out for sure. I loved it.
So, couple things. Number one, I want to say a huge thank you to Blur Jose, who is with us now. for joining our Patreon at the
Hey.
I Shall Become a Pal tier. So that's the $10 tier, which means you, sir, have a Comics Pals verse Origin coming your way. Thank you so much, Blur. That's a reminder to everybody that our Patreon is joinable, patreon.com/the Comics Pals. If you enjoy the deep dives, if you enjoy the layered conversations and the fun we have around these parts, that's the best way to support. Thank you so much, Blur. But also, Matt Fisher quickly becoming one of our boys around here. Matt Fisher dropping 1999. Thank you so much, Matt says. While the Grant run is a tremendous classic, I feel like it generally boils down to two things: Damian and Batman dying. While I love the concept now, I was very confused when I was younger by the RIP timeline. Man, I can't really distill the run down to that, to those two things. I think there's way more baked in than that.
Especially when you get into the Batman and Robin and then the Batman Inc. stuff. That tie like it's. Well, then you get the Damian. Yeah, that's. I can't dispute it, but I can't fully support that sentiment either.
Still a lot working under the hood, and I think as we talk, you'll find that Morrison was playing with a lot of really interesting concepts. Especially when you consider that RIP didn't mean rest in peace at all. This was never about Batman dying. It was really about the propagation of Batman for all time. Now, that, though, from Matt is a reminder that super chats are open if you want to support the stream. We appreciate everybody who does that. And we'll be reading comments here and there, but especially from our super chatters. I want to stick on Damian for a minute because Damian comes up throughout the run, but he's never really more important to the run than now.
Yeah.
So this is the appropriate time to discuss the character. Damian Wayne is the second time that Grant Morrison is taking something from the deep past that's thought to not even be canon and introducing it into the forefront. The first time is the first Ghost of Batman that we encountered. I'll explain more about that later. The second time is Damian Wayne. So there is a story called Son of the Demon, which is a 4-issue, not in continuity, allegedly story where Talia al Ghul and Batman have a love affair that would have resulted in a child. But Talia realizes that because Batman knows that she's pregnant with his child, he's playing it safe and he's putting himself at risk by trying to be too careful, and she thinks he'll end up dead. So she tells him that she miscarried. But at the very end of that story, you see that her child was in fact born, and it is a young boy. Other writers tried to play with that idea, but it just never went anywhere for whatever reason. It was played with a couple times in Elseworlds and in continuity as well. But Morrison went there. Morrison decided to take that idea and make it canon. Because again, the challenge was, can I take the entirety of the history, the 80 years, and make it all real? And this was an attempt to do just that. This is what Morrison had to say about the creation of Damian Wayne. My plan was to kill Damian at the end of the 4-part story where he was introduced, specifically to dodge any accusations that I was making Batman seem older by giving him a son. I planned to have Damian learn his lessons quickly before dying nobly at the end of that first arc. Although, as I say, I'd intended to do a Son of Batman story like all those Silver Age imaginary tales and partly inspired by the Son of the Demon graphic novel, I'm sure I was most influenced by the done-in-one nature of the Doctor Who episode The Doctor's Daughter, where this incredibly important character is introduced, developed, and killed over 50 minutes of television, never to be seen again. As I got into writing him, however, I began to see much more potential for Damian. I saw how his development could instead form the spine of a story spanning years. I gave him a stay of execution and shifted the date of his grim demise downstream to the end of my overarching plot, where I hoped it would be more powerful in the context of his character progression.
Damn, that foresight. Yo, Grant Morrison, be prepared, bro.
I never knew Morrison was inspired by the Doctor's Daughter, which is a phenomenal Doctor Who episode starring David Tennant's run. Our hero finds that he has an unknown child, and the child, you see the child's growth into the Doctor by the end, and it's just like, okay. And if you have that in the context of to the end of Morrison's run, not even just the third we read, but the end of Morrison's run, that makes sense as an extension of that. And also the most British thing you could have possibly done. So I appreciate that.
I'm glad that he didn't die. I think that would have damaged what was here. Like the end, leaving him sticking around, kind of just being the specter behind him. I think works well, and it works better in my mind.
Matt Fisher drops another 9.99 on us. GM was at their best during Animal Man, Doom Patrol, and Justice League runs. Also, this run was the beginning of the end for Tim as a premier character. That is 100% true. Tim Drake
Man.
did not get a lot more shine after this.
Even
Okay.
even in RIP, you can see that going away. Like, because Nightwing gets brought in, and then the spotlight starts shifting to Nightwing. We'll get to it, but yeah, I started feeling bad for Tim Drake in this.
Straight up punch in the face, dude. Like, and that's where I thought, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand the frustration with that from people because, yeah, you're right. You would have liked to see that continuation of that character become a full-fledged, continue to become a full-fledged Robin in their own right, and I thought it was interesting that uh, Morrison made the decision to just kind of bypass that. I haven't read the rest of Batman and Son, but I'm interested to see how that works, how that plays out, because Tim was cool. I liked him.
Well, don't expect you're going to see much more of Tim
Damn.
in anything written by Morrison. Amin Perez says, "Isn't Damian a test tube baby though?" I'm pretty sure that came later in the New
That's
52.
that's part of Batman Inc., which was post New 52, but still has this continuity. It's that's where it gets unfortunate.
and
but
so far beyond what I even care to get into. To be
yeah,
honest
it's
with
irrelevant
you.
to what the chunk that we read. Yeah.
Yeah. And Extract says, "Didn't LeBron read this book?" Yes, he did. I wish we could get his thoughts because I'm sure he has had a lot of time to read this.
I'll text him.
For my part, I really love Damian. I think he's a great character. I don't understand the hate he gets here. He is playing the exact role he was cast for. He is a foil. He's supposed to be a disruptor in the life of Batman and Tim and Alfred, but he also is meant to suggest that a a the idea of someone to replace Batman, again, another example. So the father creates his son, the son replaces the father, right? That's a very common idea. We're going to see that play out again in Batman 666. So if Damian is created to essentially replace Bruce Wayne, what kind of a replacement would he be? Is it in Bruce's DNA? Is it in his genes? Is Batman something he can pass on to somebody else? That is the question that Damian is meant to answer. And as we will learn, we'll get an answer to that a little later. We'll save that conversation for the 666 issue. But there is a definitive answer to that question. The rest of this arc is pretty straightforward. I don't really have a lot of things to say about the rest of this arc. You know, there's the fun rocket ship that Batman has, which turns Damian on because it's super cool. You know, they go fight the Ninja Man bats and they stop Talia and they save the day and it's all good.
One thing that I thought was good was how unsurprised Batman is about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is, Batman talks about constantly like preparing and preparation, so much so that he is prepared for the unknown. He's been prepping himself to be prepared for something he cannot be prepared for. So the idea of unknown pregnancy and I have a kid, that's probably like way down on the list of things he's already been prepared for. He doesn't question it. He's like, I know Talia, I know this is right. Like I don't need to do like there's that bit where Tim asks Alfred, I don't know where it is, but like, did he get a DNA test? And
Yeah.
no, he just knows.
I think didn't he say he did get one?
But he didn't want to tell the results. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was
he
waiting
did- he
to tell the
did.
results.
Yeah, he did get one. And the reason why he doesn't question it is because given that Batman, Son of the Demon is canonized, he knows he had sex
Yeah.
with Talia. He like
I would hope
in
so.
this it's retconned to be SA. It wasn't that in the original story. That happened because Morrison never actually read Son of the Demon and just used the concept without knowing what happened in the book, which
Oh,
is a really funny anecdote.
That's probably because it was an OGN and impossible to get.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
yeah.
I figure if Morrison wanted to get it, they probably could have gotten it from DC, but I guess they just didn't care to.
Take the check. Here you want. Take it.
Yeah.
He's ready with the
Um,
money.
do you guys have any other thoughts you want to get out about the initial arc here before we move forward?
So the actual like the meat of outside of that issue two, that second issue with the art gallery stuff, it felt a little fine for me. That son of Batman. In my head, it's like, oh, like I see that Kubert cover, that like, iconic cover, and I think like, oh, this is like the good Batman stuff, and like this as an intro to Morrison's run felt mostly par for the course for Batman for me, which may be purposeful, looking at it on a a more macro scale. But like I think Damian was written better by other writers. I think Tomasi has a kind of grows the character more. Especially those Batman and Robin issues where it's Bruce and Damian, post New 52. So liking the character of Damian, I read this, I'm like, oh, okay, this is proto what I'm used to. This is step one. This is the zygote of the actual character that we have now. So I thought it was fine. So I wasn't, I don't know if disappointed is the word, but just felt the most straightforward out of the stuff we read.
It was introductory, and I think that that's okay for Morrison setting up a new run. Obviously, introducing a lot of new ideas, but we're laying the foundation for new ideas, and so I think to do that under the guise of normalcy makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's masterful because it buries a lot of importance in the fun, bombastic elements. There's
Yeah,
so much here that if you go back and look at later has a different secondary meaning that's arguably more important. Like if you go back and you look at the first few pages again, you might notice something that you didn't the first time. It's stuff like that that's extremely important that parlays later. I really like Damien's introduction. I like him as a foil. I enjoy him as a foil for Tim specifically. Their interactions are a lot of fun. Watching Tim get his ass beat is fun. And I like seeing Damien sort of fall in love with his father. He falls in love with Batman. And I think it's an
Yes.
important distinction. He falls in love with not Bruce, but Batman, who represents the strong parental figure that can put Damian under heel. And again, that is a very, very important concept that Batman and Bruce are separate, can be separate, and can be experienced differently.
And I also forgot that Roz was dead at the time. So there is that void for Damien in terms of a paternal figure.
Right.
He was alive for some of his life. We learned that in Batman Inc. But well, hopefully we don't have to talk about the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul bits in this. But
I didn't read that.
good. Okay. Well, the omnibus is in the omnibus, and I read those. And there's interstitial pages drawn by Chris Burnham in the omnibus version that recap what happens in the non-Grant Morrison issues, which I thought was like, whoa, where is this coming from? That blew my mind. Yeah. But that is not the best stuff, but that's not really integral to Morrison's run.
Archer 2010 FX with the 5 spot says
Hey.
Morrison admitted to not reading a decade of X-Men before starting their run and saying they would never read it anyway because they felt it didn't matter. Well,
Honestly, king shit.
frankly, it didn't matter. Like you read new X-Men and none of that stuff before
Yeah.
really mattered. It was new.
Frank Quitely, it didn't matter.
Ha, nice.
So let's dig in to The Clown at Midnight. This is a very controversial, I guess you could say, story. It is a prose story by Grant Morrison with art by John Van Fleet. It's weird because it's largely just Grant's written word with some art on each page, but it's certainly not broken out like a comic. A lot of people don't like this. A lot of people skip this. They feel like it has nothing to do, or not nothing to do, but no reason to be here. I don't agree with that, but I do. For me, I don't reread this every single time I reread this run.
It's dense.
It's important though. Like it brings up that
Yeah.
idea of like the black and white. I mean, the black and red that gets, it's very important towards
Yep.
RIP. And it really, delves into the idea of the three Batman, the three ghosts of Batman. But man, I have trouble with this. I was glazing over. Sean talked about this maybe being a glaze session. My eyes were glazing over during this issue. I was not a fan of this, and I found the art, the John Van Fleet art, it looked like it looked like I had bought a novel for the book based on the TV show Reboot. And like in the old novels, they used to have pictures in the middle that would be screenshots from the show. It's like they screenshot Reboot pictures from the cartoon and put it in this book as comic book art. It's very early CG.
Yep.
Um,
Some early Blender
very
shit.
early. Yeah. Yeah. And it is not my bag. It was like if Richard Corbin was trying to work with CG. This was not my thing.
I definitely appreciate the attempt. I think that there's something there to be said about Grant's artistry, and this was a conscious choice, so I applaud him for that. I applaud them for that. But I think once you get past sort of the flowery language, the sort of macabre diction, then I think there's something interesting there that talks about his psychology and how that relates to the Joker. I think it was definitely an interesting read and one that applies to the rest of the run. But I can understand why you would skip this one. It's dense and really tough to get through. I definitely put this one down and had to pick it up a couple times.
Yeah, there's a lot of very relevant things in this. Um and essentially it is a story about the Joker's transformation. It follows up on him after him being shot and what essentially he goes through to become this new iteration, and it also shows that he's got this new poison that he wants to utilize. He tests it out on his surviving henchmen, which was something that I didn't always understand. But he tests it out on them and finds that it works. And then he kind of becomes death by ingesting and immunizing himself to this poison. They show us that by the mosquito dying that sucks on the Joker's blood. And it's a very interesting idea. The idea of the Joker as something that can transform. And he's killing his past by even trying to kill Harley Quinn and anyone who ever worked with him that was still alive, because he is in his mind, he's a new person. Um, it's good. It's good if you can handle it.
Yeah.
Like I said though, I don't always reread it because I get the point, and once you get the point, you can sort of move forward.
Yeah, the story
Yeah.
is good, but I'm reading comic books and I want to read a comic book. I can imagine like picking that up if you're like, oh, I got 662, let me pick up 663.
Oof.
And as a monthly book and you get that, I think I'd be a little cheesed off.
Yeah, I could see that. I will say the theme of the black and red going throughout even the art, the language, this idea of death and uh, life. I think it's poignant and it's cool that they used Harley here to kind of describe that, as well as just you mentioned earlier the henchman. Just seeing how truly mad Joker is cool. It's good to get into his psychology, and I think that that's what this book is you're getting into Joker's psychology, and these are the depths of that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Little quick PSA for you guys. Planet 628 points out that Organic Priced Books has a Black Friday sale with these omnibuy, the three that encompass Morrison's run, for $37.50 a piece. Now, that's an incredible deal. I wish I didn't already have them. I wish I didn't fucking spend like double that to get them when I did, even though that even double that is still a steal compared to what these books typically cost. But I recently placed an order through organic priced books like a month ago or something like that when they had this another sale, a 52% off sale. I still haven't gotten my shit. What's going on with them?
I will say,
OPB.
Amazon has them for around 42 to 44 bucks as well. So a little more, but that's Prime shipping. If you got Prime, it's gonna be free. So and you'll get it tomorrow or something like that. It might be by your door by as soon as you hit, checkout.
Send.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're on sale too, and like honestly, probably on Friday they might be more on sale. Not that I want to give Bezos any more money, but if you do want to get this quickly to read during the holidays, I don't know if you're traveling or you're gonna be places where you have a little more downtime, might be good.
All right, Tyler. We don't need to do a promo for Amazon.
I'll take some Bezos bucks while he's at it.
Well, I need to know though from anybody who uses organic priced books, like how soon do you typically get your stuff? Like, what should I expect here? So the next phase of this run begins with the Ghost of Batman issue. The essential points of this issue have to do with Bruce's relationship with Jezebel Jet as it expands, and we see that she's trying to get closer to him. We haven't really talked too much about her yet, but she's again introduced as this like Bond girl person who's a rich philanthropist who really cares about people. She's not the idea of what you would expect a rich person to be, and Bruce appears to be what you would expect, but we know that he's putting on a show for her. He says there's a moment where she's really trying to talk to him, and he has a moment of weakness where he's about to let her in and about to reveal the truth of himself to her, and he just says, "I got over it." Like in reference to the pain of his parents' death, he just says, "I got over it." And I love that moment. It stands out to me so much because the idea that Bruce is like this unhinged person versus super sane. Think about what it would take for you to be confronted by a woman you like or are falling for, who wants to get deeper and closer to you and offers you the olive branch to discuss your childhood trauma, and all you say is, "I got over it."
I can't imagine myself talking to a woman.
It feels sad for Bruce because he knows that he treats this as a vulnerability instead of trust, and I think that that's more a comment on Bruce than Batman about how he operates. Um, it felt like the mask kind of almost being pulled back, and he had to keep on the Bruce mask in that moment. It wasn't about revealing himself.
Yeah, it's a great bit. The other thing though with this issue is we get introduced to the second of the three Batman. This one is a monster. He is a giant Bane looking beast who's been injected with monster serum. He's been injected with venom, and he is fueled by, venom, hookers, and food and booze. And he's the secret that the Gotham City Police Department is essentially keeping. And in his first encounter with Batman, he whoops that ass very easily, which is extremely appropriate because, of course, Bane is the Batman villain that came the closest to defeating Batman by breaking his back. So when he encounters a police officer who is similar to Bane, he loses the fight and needs the help of one of these women of the night to get to safety.
This is where I started seeing like, oh, I see where Grant's going with these ghosts of Batman, because I'm like, oh, this is Nightfall Batman. This is that era. This is Break the Back. This is Azrael. It's all of that, and I started kind of seeing the Batmite was showing me the grid of the story in a way with this, and I like Batman kind of have to come to terms with it. But even then, like the idea of what this is not fully shown. Like Grant's not fully showing their hand just yet with this. It's still more building up the idea of these three ghosts of Batman.
So the ghosts of Batman to me represent this. The way that people perceive Batman as this unhinged, cop adjacent power junkie with a tragic past. So the way he's perceived by people in the real world, his different identities and extremes, like Batman from the Venom story arc, where he's on Venom and looks like a hulking beast, just like Bronca here, the second ghost. And the idea of Batman as a mysterious, almost supernatural being with ties to the devil. That ties that they also tie Batman to the Joker, as at the same time Joker is killing his past in preparation for a revival. Batman is being confronted by his past in an attempt to weaken him and separate him from himself. So these three ghosts are working on and represent things on multiple layers of storytelling, both meta, past, and present. And I think all of that is incredibly fascinating.
The first thing I thought of was Christmas Carol. Ghost,
Sure.
of Christmas past, present, future. Past being the guy with the gun. That's Bruce's past. It's the gun. It's not really a Batman with a gun. The idea is the gun. That's the real character there, and that's his past. That is the evolution of Batman, the creation of him in the alley, and almost the Braca, the Bane-esque one was almost like the present. It's the closest to where we've been with Batman at the time. It's right before pre-2000s or so, so that felt like Grant kind of talking about that era of Batman. And then the third one we'll get to represents the future, because that's the one that was so close to being the one that could take over for him in the eventual demise of Bruce Wayne.
So, to what you said earlier, Sean, is it that these are police officers, but this is how they are viewed by Batman? There's some kind of mental, or like, this is part of the Black Glove long game of these individuals are distorted to appear a certain way.
So the way that I've always viewed it is that we know that these are cops who underwent an experiment by Dr. Hurt to see if
Mm.
trauma is the key to his supposition is that trauma is the key to Batman. So he feels like if he can cause them all trauma, then their skills plus their trauma will equal Batman. And we know that that's not the case. It's an opportunity again to ask the question, what happens if what makes Batman? Why is Batman so good at this? What is the key to that? And it feels like Grant, Dr. Hurt, a lot of people are asking that same question, and we're seeing the answer consistently be that Bruce is the major piece to that equation, not anything else.
They tried creating Batman with a formula. Batman's not a formula.
Right. Okay.
Does that answer your question, Marco?
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Matt Fisher dropping another $9.99 on us. Thanks so much, Matt. Really appreciate you between today and Saturday. You've been keeping us afloat. Not a big Joker fan, but this story does have one of my favorite Joker moments. When Batman pushes himself out of the grave, Joker says, "You thought you could beat him? Nah, playtime's over. I'm out," and just leaves. Yes, yes. I can't wait to get to the RIP piece, because that's a lot of fun. That's a great bit of it. Thank you, Matt. All right, so we're going to talk a lot about the three ghosts, because they're all over the place here. So the Black Casebook is mentioned for the first time in this
Yeah.
issue as well, and that's another critical piece of information. The Black Casebook during the story represents the instances in which Batman and Robin dealt with things that can't be explained by conventional wisdom, logic, or rationale. It's meeting with vampires. It's, alien encounters. It's dealing with clones, all these kinds of things. And one of the things that Batman discusses in the Black Casebook is these ghosts of Batman. And we get into the Black Casebook a lot more later. It's worth pointing out that there is a real Black Casebook that you can buy. It features the stories that Grant read that inspired this run. So a lot of the stuff that Grant pulls from that seem to be random are actually things that it happened in Batman's past, and you can read those stories. For what it's worth, I did read them, and it's insane sometimes to see that what Grant got from some of those older stories. It's wild.
That's so cool. I can imagine like deep pulls for no reason other than it made sense to Grant's brain.
Does it have like the introduction of the original court of heroes or whatever group of
Yep.
heroes? Yeah, okay. I
Yep.
never read the Black Case book, but I was aware of it. But I'm curious. I'm sure the Zur-En-Arrh story's in there too with the Rainbow Batman and stuff. Yeah.
The Black Case book has the Club of Heroes. It has Batmite. It has the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. It has the Rainbow Batman. It has a lot of stuff that you see here.
I would have loved that for their run in Action Comics, honestly.
Robin died at dawn. Julia Raul points out Robin died at dawn. That is probably the most critical story to this whole deal. It's important to understand that Robin dies at dawn is a story in which Batman decides he's going to try to help engage space travel by helping space medicine. He's going to undergo an experiment of I think it was oxygen deprivation or something like that to see what happens. And he undergoes a hallucination in which Robin is killed. Dr. Simon Hurt is there. And he's there in the original issue, Robin Dies at Dawn, but he has no name. It's funny because the character, though, does look not exactly, but very similar to Simon Hurt here.
Man, that's the type of Morrison shit I love, though.
Crazy.
You know, like this all matters throughout.
Yep. Yep. Emily, the goaltending drummer, points out the story of Thomas Wayne's bat costume is also there. It's all there. It's crazy. So yeah, as we push things forward into 666, this is one of those standout issues that I think most people who've read this arc remember and revere. It's an issue focused on Damian. What if Damian grows up to become Batman? What does that look like? Again, think about what I said before. The father creates the son, becomes the father. So now Damian has become Batman. Can he do this? Can he be a successful successor to his father? This issue says not really.
He's different. He's a little more unhinged. He's
A little.
Oh, he's willing to take extreme measures. I loved Alfred the cat though. That was cute.
Of course, his Alfred is somebody that can't consult him. It's somebody he just talks to.
Yeah.
As a guy with cats, I get it. It's interesting because like this is I guess the first mention of people like Flamingo and Professor Pig and stuff like that. I guess first appearance too, but it's not the same way we see them later on. But I always like the idea that like, oh, the Rogues Gallery is different because he's killed them all. They're all dead, but there's still a need for Batman. So even though the method of how Damian goes about being Batman and like these guys don't exist, you know, he's not dealing with Mad Hatter. He's dealing with new characters. There's still a need for a Batman, which then makes me think of the futility of it all. You know, even if this is what people say Batman should do. You know, he should be a little more ruthless instead of just locking people up in Arkham. But even then, there's still a need for a Batman.
Yeah. Apparently there will always be a need for a Batman, and Batman needs an arch enemy. And in this story, his arch enemy is actually the third Batman that that Damian's father, Bruce, will encounter later on, although it's in the past at the same time. This issue introduces to this story the concept of Batman encountering the devil. So this third Batman is supernaturally powered. He is still alive and vibrant, even though Damian is clearly older. And he claims that he is empowered by the devil. He says, it's way past time to stop this. The Batman failed to kill me when he had his chance. If he had, perhaps things might have been different for both of us. But destiny had plans for me, and I prayed and prayed until he came, the old man, the dragon. He came with wings of black skin like a bat and anointed me his Messiah. So I'll give you one last chance. Join me, Neil, join me as my soldier. He's and we see him rising from the water and walking on it. The
That was
idea is
cool.
that I love that shit. He's like the Antichrist.
Yeah,
I
and
also
and sorry, and he's confronted by Damien, who at one moment says, being the son of the demon, right? His soul has been removed. He doesn't have that kind of weighing him down, and executes him.
Well, he made a deal with the devil. He made a deal with the devil to protect Gotham.
Hmm.
I also view that as Damien deciding on his two legacies, in a way. Um, he's always going towards the Batman legacy, and like that is his father, but he's also the son of the demon. You know, he also has that legacy in him, and this is that confronting him, the legacy of this demon, uh, uh, confronting him and calling him out for not being that successor. Instead, he's the successor of Batman instead. Um, which I think is a good summation of who Damien is. It is, even though he's ruthless and a horrible person in a way, in some ways, he's still a rejection of what Ra's was, and he is a continuation of what Batman is, for better or for worse.
Yeah. I love the fact that this gives us a look into the future of the Morrison run by showing us those characters like Professor Pig, and that's so cool. Love
I
that.
saw that. I was like, oh wait, I thought that happened later.
Yeah, I saw Dollatron. I'm like, wait, what? What? Dollatron showed up already? Okay, hold on.
Jack and Apes was cool.
It's also just worth throwing out there that Damien makes a pact with the devil just like the criminal from Gothic did. And in Gothic, we saw the devil come to collect. And in the end of 666, Damien challenges the devil to collect on his soul. So a lot of that sort of satanic idea playing into the margins of this book, and it will be very relevant going forward. Next, we get into the Black Glove aspect of this whole thing. We get into that arc, which says goodbye to Anicure, but hello to J.H. Williams III, who is joined by Dave Stewart on colors and Ken Lopez on the letters. Visually speaking, this is my favorite arc of the run.
Those J.H. Williams like double pagers, where it's the wings of the bat and all the art is within the
Yeah.
wings and it's this painted thing. That is why J.H. Williams III is one of my favorite artists of all time. I don't think he gets to spread his wings, pun intended, as much in this as he later does in things like Batwoman, or I guess it was Detective Comics at the time, or even his what was the current book that he's doing right now? Echo
Oh,
Lands.
Echo Lands.
Yeah.
Echo. Yeah.
It's literally a widescreen format meant for him. But
Yeah.
there's some real good comic book storytelling in this arc.
This arc was my favorite. I enjoyed this because it felt pulpy. It felt like it mattered. People were getting got left and right. It kept me on my toes. And then the reveal at the end being one that felt satisfactory, but played into something even later. Loved it. I thought that's comic book storytelling. That's comics narrative because you're playing to the end of your story, your arc, and expanding into your like seeding things into your next arc. I think that's how those things should be happening. And so I loved it. And the art, I have notes. I have some comments in the art, especially the distinction between Batman, Robin, and the rest of the crew. It's interesting that they feel so distinct from each other.
Hmm. Um, man, so this whole arc it introduces us to the Club of Heroes, and it references the idea that at some point Batman was a part of this Club of Heroes who are heroic people from across the world who are sort of like a mini Batman in their own area. Notably, they are not Batman emulations per se. They have their own identities. Like, who are these people? I forget their
Centurion.
Yeah.
uh, Dark Ranger.
Yeah, they've all got their own identities and stuff like that, and they all look up to Batman. They're inspired by Batman, but they have their own, secret identities and stuff like that. And they're on this island. They've been brought back here by John Mayhew, who is the same person that originally had them join up together. He was the one funding the whole operation. Interestingly enough, in the original appearance of the Club of Heroes that Morrison was pulling from, John Mayhew is also in that. So everything from
Nice.
that is canonized here, which is super cool. But these all these people look up to Batman. What did you think about the Club of Heroes?
Loved it. I like that they felt like at the same time a parody, but it because there were stakes, it made them feel real. They felt capable but unprepared, and I think that was a big distinction. Is it's even represented in the art where Batman always has this like slight gouache watercolor kind of look and colors. He's always drenched in shadow, but the other characters are a little more bright. They feel like they're from a Silver Age, Golden Age type story, and so I think their inclusion helps to contrast the stark seriousness of Batman, but you're throwing Batman into this goofy world of Native American, this was it wingman
It's
type
it's
guy,
the
like
YMCA of comic book clubs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And but again, it's playing to the fact that he's being goofy. He's playing into Silver Age sensibilities, but treating them as serious.
Yeah, because the characters are derivative in who they are. Even Wingman, who was like, yeah, I was Wingman before Batman even existed, is somehow derivative still. Um,
Yeah,
but it's never played in a negative sense. It's like, yes, they're derivative, but that's because of the power of the idea of Batman, and it permeates culture and it permeates location. This, Morrison will really get into this during Batman Inc. When this kind of gets blown up and expanded upon. But man, seeing a Knight and Squire again, I pop so hard. I love
yeah,
Knight and Squire. Cyril and Beryl are such good characters. And seeing the intro here, which I never read. This is something I never read. I've read pretty much everything else since the Paul Cornell miniseries, Knight and Squire miniseries, is A tier stuff. Really, really good stuff. Um, that plays with some of this, plays a little bit of the Batman RIP stuff, and I recommend that. But kind of seeing this kind of pulpier whodunit story, like this felt like a Ryan Johnson Knives Out universe type
yeah.
movie. It feels like a mixture of Knives Out and Glass Onion, in the way it's a pulpy, like, all right, there's a killer here. It's one of us probably. Who is it? Why is it? And yeah, I thought this was just a fun. What is it, like 3, 4 issues? Like 4?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah,
It's a good
relatively
bite-sized,
short
fun,
arc.
pulpy Batman thing, which again is another reflection of who Batman is. There's the pulp aspect of the character that Morrison's playing with here as well.
So I really love the Club of Heroes because of what they represent. And I think what they show and reveal about Batman is also incredibly interesting. So, first of all, Batman respects them. And that's something that I really like. Because, yes, in a way, you could see them as cheap imitations, but Batman really, especially in this run, really wants to inspire other people to be better than they are. We see him give the young girl earlier in the story Bruce Wayne's card so that she can go get a job and get off the streets. He wants people to rise above. So the idea that people were inspired enough by his life to go out and be heroes is something that Batman appreciates, even though they're not necessarily that great at it. And what's wrong with them and what makes them inferior to Batman is that they're just regular guys.
Mm.
They're not flawed in any particular way. They're just regular. They're probably decent heroes too, but they're more like what people would be like in real life if they were vigilantes.
Yes,
Keeping with the theme that there's something about Bruce that makes him singularly capable of doing what he does.
that was something that I felt. I'm like, oh, this feels like a random Joe Schmo puts on, a helmet, puts on a costume, and starts patrolling the subway, and like that. But it plays to that seriousness again. It is silly, but you treat it as for real, and it makes for a really heightened story.
This is Phoenix Jones, is what it is. The real life version of Batman that we have here. It's just the inspiration aspect of the character
Mm.
and what it can do.
Yeah, I love that, and it's that examination of, why is Bruce so good at this when everybody else is not. I like that Morrison keeps finding ways to go back to the same point to force you to ask that question of yourself. And the art, man, wow, J.H. Williams is just such a beast. The page where their planes explode in the first issue
Yeah.
and the black glove is over it. Oh my God. And then when they get attacked a little bit later, when Beryl and Robin get attacked and the black glove is over Batman, I just love that visual representation. And he's doing so many fun things throughout this arc visually. There's so much like standing around and characters just sort of talking and thinking, but Williams finds great, interesting ways to represent that. And one of the most interesting panels that he does throughout is when Batman first walks in the room, when all these heroes have been talking about him, some shitting on him, some admiring him, but Batman walks in the room, and the way that's represented is a splash page where Batman is standing there and all of their facial reactions are baked into Batman's body. So in his body you can see their faces representing the idea that they are him, or rather that he is them because he inspired them. I love that.
It comes in black and white. He is black and white. He is the shadow that lurks there, and they're in color. They're not at that level. That's something that becomes a motif throughout the rest of these. Where even in that next issue after the Centurion dies, you have panels where the squares are cut out and colored, but the actual background is a single page, but it's all black and white because that's not what your eye is supposed to focus on. It's supposed to highlight moments, and I think that that happens throughout this arc.
Yeah,
God, I
that's
love
cool.
this. And
Yes, bro.
you mentioned earlier, but every time the Black Glove kills somebody or makes a move, you get the cutaway to the hand. Genius.
Mm-hmm. And we also get introduced to Jonathan Mayhew, John Mayhew as a character. And he's a very important, interesting character to me. So he's the representation of the kind of evil that the Black Glove is on the first layer. They're like these rich, vile thrill seekers who value dopamine hits by any means necessary. They're an inversion of Bruce, but not the Bruce that he puts out there, the Bruce that he actually is. John Mayhew is what you think Bruce would be like, but he's not. Bruce is not like that. John Mayhew's is a Howard Hughes type of character, a rich, reclusive guy who's kind of willing to do more and more things for kicks. And it's interesting to point out that Christopher Nolan actually used Howard Hughes as the inspiration for Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Rises. So there is that
Oh,
connection.
okay. I dig it. I think that being the foil it's a rich guy's romp again. Pulp shit.
Exactly. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper than that, what was the most, like, other than terrorism, right? There were two kinds of things that people were really worried about as far as, like, bigger concerns in the world in the 2000s. You had terrorism, but you also had this ever present idea that there was a controlling elite who were working together, conspiring to rule the world. And they were doing that through supernatural means. Maybe you guys have heard of some of that stuff like Moloch and, quote unquote, religion or rich people who were worshiping an owl god, Satanists,
Pizzagate.
all that. Yeah, all
Yeah.
that became a really popular idea. And the Black Glove is a stand in for that.
The Black
Love it.
Glove is the invisible hand that controls things. Yeah.
Exactly. So overall, what are your thoughts on this arc, the Black Glove arc?
My favorite. This hit every mark that I would have wanted Grant to hit. The art is incredible, and I think it's a fun story that I can see coming back to. This one I can definitely see just coming back to because it's a good read. I love the mystery of it, and it really gets me. So I'm yeah, big fan of this one. I like this one much better than the first arc.
I think this third of Morrison's run is a ramp up for me. I like this more than Batman and Son. I like Batman RIP more than this though. So I think it just gets better and better as I read it. It kind of started for me like Batman and Son's like it's fine, but it as Morrison gets to live in this world and play around with it, introduce things, and then play with things they already introduced, and play around with stuff. It gets better and better. So this is good by itself. I think this is a good standalone whodunit story, but it also is a puzzle piece of a bigger puzzle that Morrison's making.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think things just get better and better. And again, Morrison is seeding things that will just simply play out in a more concrete way down the road. So seeing things play out that were set up, and especially if you were reading this at the time, like I was reading this from we're about to get to the issue where I actually started reading Batman comics. And from that point forward, I was on the hook for years. I was probably reading this story playing out for 6 years. So when you get to see stuff, you know, down the road, it hits you so hard. Um, but after all of that, the third Batman takes center stage as Tony Daniel joins the creative team as penciler, which was really fun. I was happy to see him join up with Morrison, and of course, Daniel's the penciler during Batman RIP as well. And Batman is confronted again by these ghosts of Batman, and he's actually defeated by the third one. He gets shot in the chest, and he's knocked out, and he is now being held hostage by this third Batman.
I was a little confused there because he gets shot in the chest, gives him a heart attack, which then we get flashbacks and all that stuff, and the idea of the isolation chamber and all that stuff gets brought up. But then Gordon gets shot the same way, but he's fine. Did I read
When does
that
he
wrong?
get shot?
Like directly after Batman to get away. Doesn't he shoot Gordon as well?
Yes, he does.
But then Gordon just eats that shit.
So Batman is also dealing with I think there's a trigger phrase he gets hit with or something like that.
Oh, it
Uh
was in the blades, I think.
yeah. Yes, the
Yeah.
blades. The
Okay.
blades are drenched with a poison that takes him
Yes.
out.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And then we get a sequence where we see how Batman tormented Joe Chill. And in all my years, I have never known if this whole sequence was definitively canon or if it is just a hallucination that Batman is undergoing. I have never known.
As the first time reading this, it was not clear to me either.
I always read it as a hallucination, but I found evidence to suggest in my research that this was actually a canon event, that this is showing us the way that Batman dealt with Joe Chill in his earlier years once he discovered his identity and all that good stuff. I don't know. I don't know. But this is when we get introduced to Dr. Hurt as a real character. And they kind of show you redrawn, reworded sequences from the space medicine. Well, it's not called space medicine. The Robin dies at dawn issues from the past. And you find that in that story, Bruce thinks that Robin has died. But he didn't actually die. It was Bruce's mind hallucinating after he gives himself over to try to help the government, and he's actually told Batman, by volunteering for this test, you made a remarkable contribution to space medicine. But all he wanted to do was have a closer look into the way the Joker's mind works. And we see that again and again, Bruce's decisions are motivated by the Joker, trying to figure out if he can do something to help him understand why the Joker is the way that he is. This and the Thogal experiment were both ways to try to figure out if he can see into the Joker's mind.
And
Right.
that's
So he has to be
Batman.
prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just has to enter the rabbit hole, you know?
There cannot be unknown factors for Batman. Even
Right.
the unknown must be known in some way.
Yo, man, he hits that real good meditation. I haven't gotten there yet, Batman. I haven't got there, Grant. Please forgive me.
Now they just have like those. You can just go to a spa now and go in one of those tubes, right? Those like little tubs with the
Oh, the sensory
deprivation tubs.
deprivation?
Yeah, yeah.
Nah, not the same.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna become Batman by the next episode. You'll see.
Should you wait?
Dude, I would have loved to have become Batman somehow. When I was reading this shit,
Sean, there's still time.
well, I wouldn't want to try because based on this story, apparently trying to become Batman as an adult is a super fail and it will turn you into a maniac, which is what we see with these three Batmen. I always love the way that Batman gets out of this this trap set by the third man by just dislocating his arm.
Dude, when I saw that bit where the third Batman cuts his arm, my thought was like, is it cake? Like,
Oh,
it cuts through. It's nothing there. I'm like, how do you keep it stiff? What's there air in there?
that is disgusting. Yeah, so we see the origins of the various Batmen. We see how Simon Hurt experimented on them. The concept that Batman's trauma or Bruce's trauma is what leads to Batman is introduced here. And I believe this was my first issue of Batman.
Oh,
Yeah, and I was extremely confused, but man, did I love it. I remember getting the back issues. Like I was able to get the most recent issue back issues to catch up. And I read those things so many times trying to figure out what Morrison was putting down. But beyond all that, I was enraptured by how cool this shit was. Watching Batman face off with these evil doppelgangers and being able to take them out was just sick as hell. And that question of, who's doing this? What is this? And by the time you get to the end and Bruce says he says it's great dialogue. It's his inner monologue. He says, if my hypothetical ultimate enemy can be imagined, I can't help considering the possibility that he actually exists. Um and if he exists, if the king of crime is real, is he telling me his name? And he's holding a black glove in his hand, which is the only thing that the third man left behind. Just sick.
foreshadowing.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
And do you think that they're in that evil that he prepares for is the Joker? Like that ultimately is the end goal for Batman?
He thinks so.
I think there could be something said. I mean, we'll talk about it RIP, but there is that red and black dynamic
Hmm.
between Batman and Joker. It's two sides of the same coin. You can't really have one without the other. And even though it's that thing he must always be prepared for, you can never prepare for the Joker because the Joker sometimes doesn't even know who he's going to be. So it's that never-ending continuation of this need for Batman.
Well, I don't think that this has anything to do with the Joker. This is
No,
very
no,
definitively
yeah.
not about the Joker, but Bruce's training was inspired by the Joker.
Yeah.
But this ultimate enemy monologue is not about the Joker.
Okay.
I want to address the chat real quick. So Mike Ratique says, hot take, Morrison's run became too much of an acid trip for me. I prefer Batman and Son, Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, and all the Dick Bat stuff in Batman and Son. And says Black Glove and RIP lost me. Comics Relic says, I love Black Glove and RIP was a mixed bag for me. It's the whole Nietzsche stare into the abyss thing with Batman trying to figure out the Joker. But there's so much more to it than that. I'm surprised you stopped there because it's not really what that's not what this run is about. The run goes a lot further than that.
Yeah, like the Joker is an inevitability that one must be ready for sure. But then it has to talk to the lengths to which Batman is ready for things that happen at a moment's notice. Like the entirety of it is, well, he's prepared, he's ready, he is the peak superhero, and that is what we're trying to say here is that Batman is a representation of peak super heroicness.
Yeah, exactly. A hero who, by the way, is completely sane, completely in his full mind. It's one of those things that Morrison is very obviously and clearly trying to reject. The idea that Bruce Wayne is not all there. That in this story, in this version of Batman, that is just not true. You have to abandon that at the door.
Not only is the history of Batman all there and all part of one character, but so is the facets of Bruce Wayne himself. Like, and even
Yeah,
like the idea that like, oh, his father was or Bruce might be schizophrenic because, well, his father. It's kind of brought to the forefront too. Like, hey, Batman's crazy. Bruce Wayne is a crazy person. No, these are all aspects of the character.
exactly. But that takes us into RIP. I mean, well, did you guys read the 3-page intro? Well, it appeared in DCU Zero, which I think was free. I think that was a free issue at the time around Free Comic Book Day. And it's 3 pages, and it's Batman and the Joker having a conversation in prison.
I think that was part of this as well. Yeah, the prologue. Yes, it's part of the omnibus. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. And it's him sort of asking Joker, like, do you know who the Black Glove is? And Joker is kind of happy that he knows something, or he thinks he knows something that Batman doesn't know, and he just fucks with him. It's an awesome sequence. Uh, Beautiful pages, by the way. The one
Daniels.
4 yeah, the 16 panel page is sick as hell. And Bruce says, Joker, if I was scared, I wouldn't be Batman. Whoever they are, tell them to bring it on. Let's go. Like, is that not Batman?
Damn,
Like,
I wish I read
whoever it
that.
is.
It's not included in the app. They just give you the single issues for what makes up what constitutes the run.
Okay.
Damn.
Uh,
16 panel break.
well, yeah, but that's the grid again. That's the grid that comes up later on.
Oh, is it colored
it's
in red and black?
oh,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Every panel, every other panel is red or like a grayish grayscale.
Yeah.
It's that back and forth. It's the forever game between Batman and Joker that exists in this dichotomy.
Can we take a quick minute to reference the covers by Alex Ross?
Dude, as soon as those Alex Ross covers started coming in, I'm like, hell yeah, this is what I remember picking up
Yeah.
every week and looking forward to that. My introduction to Alex Ross too was this.
Mm.
Nice. Sick. Yeah,
As an
these are
artist,
cool,
I'm
man.
sure I've seen Alex Ross stuff beforehand from being a Marvel fan, but this is when I started recognizing his name.
Hmm.
Right. Comics Relic says, do you think this was meant as a commentary or embellishment on the super prepared Batman in the JLA Tower of Babylon story? Tower of Babel,
Babel.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think it is an extension of that. I just recently read Morrison's JLA. I read the first arc, and you can see that this Batman has a lot of ties to that one. They're very similar. That Batman has no problem going up against the White Martians. He's the one that figures out their trick, their truth. He is super capable. He is super competent. This Batman has no failings whatsoever. He's prepared for everything. He is the wheel within the wheels, and there is no getting over on him. I love that version.
And that's exactly what that version where the detective is the superpower is what this version is. It's the need to always be prepared for what you can't prepare for.
It's his will,
Yeah.
his indomitable will. You can bury this man.
Literally.
You can do anything. You can poison him. You can bury him. You can break his heart. You can give him a kid he didn't know about. You can do anything to Batman, and he will overcome.
Yeah, I don't think this was a commentary or embellishment. I think this was a presentation of who that Batman is. And this is who Grant thinks Batman is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then we start with R.I.P. in earnest. The Batmobile is finished. I love that. In the first issue, we see that the Batmobile is unfinished, and he tells Tim, wait, we'll wait for the unveiling, and here we are, and it's finished, and it's rad as hell. I always love this design.
It was classic.
Yeah, yeah, it's sleek, but it's very cool.
Uh,
Go ahead.
and I feel like the, this is also the moment where we finally get the, well, first of all, Tony Daniel's art I think is phenomenal because we start with this more cinematic approach at the start. um, we start to get these moments of like pictures and credits. It doesn't happen in this issue necessarily, but we start to get, credits at the start. Here's who the creators are. So it felt very momentous. And I think Daniels was the perfect artist to like help carry that along because it, I love his representation of Bruce.
Mhm.
And then we get the Zur-En-Arrh stuff. It pays off. And I, seeing this for the first time was mixed because I can see the, like, obviously when I was first reading this I already recognized it. I already saw the art in the background, so some of that suspense and surprise kind of was pulled away because I saw the machinations of that. But I think he follows through on it being uh, on it being a occasion for Bruce to go into this kind of like psychosis.
Go
It's
ahead. Go
it's a
ahead, Tyler.
yeah, I was gonna say it's a psychosis to bring him to a place where you can bring Batman to his lowest and even still have him come out of that
Hmm.
because he's Batman. Because Batman will overcome no matter what. And Batman R.I.P. is about leaving Batman at its most vulnerable and how he comes back from that. Um, and one of the most important things to Batman is his mind. So you give him a way to even lose that and have to come back from that as well. Um, I just thought of it as an aspect of it. It's weird reading this with Zdarsky's run in my head because like that's a continuation of the Zur-En-Arrh in our idea.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, this is failsafe. This is proto failsafe, um, which it is. But that was an interesting read. Doing this as a second read through, but I like it as an idea of like, all right, well, let's take one of this whole thing is taking Batman's his utility belts away from him. You take away his mind. You take away um, his secret identity. You take away his Batcave. You take away his Robins. All of it's gone, and he still comes back from it.
From an art perspective, the masks here that we see from the Black Glove, did you guys get absolute Batman vibes with was his face the black mask in that?
This
It felt
movie
like it was
gives
pulling
this
from there.
movie gives me Boss Baby vibes. This guy who's only watched Boss Baby. uh, I don't know, like in what sense, like the Batman's mask or
No,
Hurt's
no, just
mask?
like the henchmen, they have these like animal
Oh, the
looking.
gargoyles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, right, gargoyles. That's right.
Yeah, they're just goons for the Hunchback character. I
Right,
think.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
which
Level 2.
all of the court the club of villains are all the jokers of the club of heroes, right? In a way, you have El
Yes.
Sombrero, and then like I did like trying to piece, all right, who's with who. Like the Swagman is obviously Knight's version, um, and trying to figure out who would be paired with who. That was fun for me.
Yeah, this issue introduces a lot of concepts that were maybe referenced at some earlier point, but very loosely, and starts to bring them more to the forefront. Like we learned that it's possible that Thomas and Martha Wayne were not the goody two shoes people that we thought they were. And it's all about tearing down the mythology of the Waynes. It's looking at the legacy of their name the same way it's looking at the legacy of Batman and tearing that idea down that the Waynes were good people. And using the idea that maybe they were a part of the Black Glove too. And Jim Gordon sees this and he's like, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. That can't be true. But it doesn't even matter if it's true or not because perception is reality, and this is what they're going to feed the public. And hopefully, in the Black Glove's mind, it will destroy the Waynes who are foundational to Gotham, which we will learn in a more concrete way later on in the run.
Well, and then to hurt Bruce's ego too, because he reveres his parents. You know, they're these amazing philanthropists. His dad's a renowned surgeon, and so to have the idea that they are not what they seem or duplicitous in their presentation could hurt him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Jezebel Jet even tries to insinuate she's been invited to this Black Glove event, and she talks to Bruce, and he brings her to the Batcave, and she's kind of like, "Yo, you're crazy, dude. This is sad. What is wrong with you? Like, this is not a good use of your money. It's not a good use of your time. Like, you are living a child's fantasy."
That one bit where she said that you could have paid for my country's problems 9 times over by now for what you put into this Batcave. That was like, oh, okay, I like that bit. That really puts a spotlight on how, like, let's be real, how fucking stupid and crazy Batman is, you know? Like, it's showcasing how, like, is this really the right thing to be doing? It's putting doubt in Batman, which is what this whole breakdown of Batman as a character in RIP is.
And I like the moments where, you know, it harkens back to the all text issue, where all of the, you know, the connections that Bruce is making in his mind, and Arkham is there just being like, you know, just you wait. Of course, yeah, sure, yeah, oh yeah, the black glove. You know, you have, what is it, the 8, and that's that's the 8th letter in the card. Sure, sure, Batman, yeah, yeah, just you wait. And she's playing into that insecurity or fear again of, but are you sure? Like, how do you know that I'm like a corrupted asset? You know, because he's like, somebody who would be trying to get to me would get to me through you, and then you have this invite. So it builds himself up to be this yeah, this crazy person essentially.
And there's a moment as he's nearing his breakdown where Bruce is like, he's got the computer up, and, you know, there's all this graffiti on the screen, and he says something highly delusional. And I love the way that Morrison scripts Bruce in these sequences where he's trying to tell us that this dude is losing it. And he says, if it's me, the Bat computer will know. The fuck are you talking about? If you're the Black Glove, the Bat computer will know. And he says, what the hell's wrong with it? It's just static on screens. And then Judge says, Bruce, you're scaring me. Static? What are you talking about? And he says, what does it say? And she says, it says Zur-En-Arrh. And that's it. He has this super crazy breakdown. He falls apart. He loses it. He passes out. The mansion's being invaded. They start to beat the shit out of Alfred. Everything has gone to hell. Zur-En-Arrh, that phrase, that if you've been paying attention, has been in the book since the beginning of the book. I love that bit.
The graffiti was evident pretty early on in the run, right?
First
It's
thing,
a,
yeah,
yeah,
page.
it's on, yeah, it's right there immediately.
And for, so he put those things up on the wall or on the screen, right? Bruce did. Okay.
Theoretically, yeah.
Right. Okay. That's why I think that's why he said the Bat computer would know. He put some. I imagine that he put something in there that helps to qualify whether or not he's gone insane, and this was that backup. Does that make
So you're
sense?
so you're saying he did this to himself?
Right, because he's like, well, he's like, it couldn't be me, could it? I know I've been under pressure these last few years. If it's me, the Bat computer will know. And you know, he says it's just static. So he's blocked that out in his mind until the word says it, or until Jet says it, and that activates Zur-En-Arrh. I think he set himself up through the Bat computer to ensure that he would be okay after whatever happens.
What about the graffiti?
I couldn't figure that out. That was the thing
Because
that I couldn't figure out.
because it was planted by Dr. Hurt.
Yeah, Dr. Hurt knows Zur-En-Arrh exists.
Yeah, this is all an elaborate plot that he's he has orchestrated to turn Batman out. And that's why the Zur-En-Arrh appears, so that he will hear that trigger phrase. She says it on purpose to take him out of the equation, because they don't realize what's about to happen to them as a result of this, but they think it's just going to shut him down.
Yeah, the Zur-En-Arrh is what he developed while he's doing that what's the
Nanda Parbat
the Nanda Parbat thing.
meditation.
No, did he develop it there?
That's how I was reading it.
Yeah, because he has that one discussion with the monk, and he switches the teacups around. So it was from that. It was directly after that when Zur-En-Arrh was created. But I think he's like, all right, I'm going to break this. When he was at his mentally lowest, this is what happened. Let's bring him back there. Not knowing that Zur-En-Arrh is really a failsafe for, oh God, I said failsafe unironically. For all
as if
that.
you didn't do that on purpose, please. No, I mean, the Batman Zur-En-Arrh piece always bothered me when I first read this run.
There was a lot of heat around it. Yeah, people were like, what was like jumping the shark here?
I didn't get it. I didn't really care for it, and I thought that the piece with Bruce like walking through the streets with that homeless guy, Honor Jackson, was just really bizarre. I was like, what the fuck are you going for, Grant?
I still don't care much for the Honor Jackson part.
I love that.
That feels a little what's the term? It's like magical Negro, right? That trope in film and in books and stuff. It feels a little tropey to me. I don't care much for that, but I do like the idea because that character shows up in issue 2 before. Batman skids to a halt and stops himself from hitting a homeless guy. And then he says, "Oh, you have a nice face," or whatever. And then Batman gives him a wad of cash. We later learn out that wad of cash is what kills the guy because he theoretically uses it to overdose.
Right.
Which, looking back on it in the second read through, I'm like, all right, I don't really like the trope that Morrison's using here, but I can see how maybe this is a representation of Gotham for Batman and his guide through Gotham in a way as this created character. But I still don't care much for that in this story.
He's using that to get over drugs.
Right.
He's getting over his drug-induced mania by going on a walkabout with Honor Jackson, a guy who's already dead. And I didn't like it at first because I never understood I didn't understand what was happening. But after I figured it out on my third run or whatever, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes total sense. I like this. In a way, Honor Jackson, the memory of Honor Jackson, saved Bruce's life.
Yeah, he's just trying to get clean. That's it. So you wait a couple. That's what he even says. You know, he's like, "Oh, you go hang out for a second, relax, wait." Like he's just getting over a high.
I thought it was nuts though, where Dr. Hurt was like, "All right, and let's pump him with street grade heroin."
I was like, "Whoa,
Crazy.
hold on a second.
That's real."
Yeah, that shit was nuts. But all of the things that we see Bruce do after Zur-En-Arrh shuts him down are all things that his mind is doing to help him. Batmite turning into the Zur-En-Arrh, Honor Jackson, the gargoyles, all that stuff is stuff that Bruce has done to himself to help him get through this because he is still dealing with the effects of heroin.
I loved the Batmite parts.
Yeah.
I was confused at that on my first read through. To be fair, my first arc of Batman dealt with Batmite, so that's tricky. But the idea that Batmite is it is Batman's imagination, but at the same time is still real in the sense that like Batmite exists. I thought that was a great kind of folding in of everything that Morrison did.
I like the explanation of the fifth dimension just being imagination.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's still real, even though,
perfect.
yes, it is your imagination.
Yeah. Hey, then it's real, right? The imagination is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all very cool. I hated Batmite when I first read this.
No.
That's just like anti my jam as a 17-year-old, but I definitely came around on it later.
What was the
Not the
bit
little
where
guy.
Batmite was occasionally drawn with like spider legs, spider arms coming out?
Yeah, I never knew what that was.
I still couldn't figure out what was going on there. It's not every panel, It's only sometimes, but he has these greenish blue legs that come out of him. I don't like it.
So there's a great line that Batman says at some point during this particular issue that's really important. He says, "I'm the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. I'm what you get when you take Bruce out of the equation." Now, of course, we're all in the future, so we know how the Zur-En-Arrh concept would be expanded upon. But in this book, what Morrison is saying essentially is that Batman and Bruce Wayne are different parts, like a partition in Bruce's mind that he can access at will. And Batman of Zur-En-Arrh is Batman without Bruce. That's all that means in my
Right.
mind now. That's all that means. And that's extremely dangerous because it's a lack of the heart, it's a lack of the pain, it's a lack of all the things that you would think would be the weakness of a man. Bruce has the capacity to just shut off by accessing a different personality. That's crazy.
Hmm. Does that remove the idea that Bruce is part of the equation then? That the reason you can't replicate another Batman is then not because of Bruce?
Well, he couldn't run around like this forever. This is a reaction to a very specific situation,
Right.
but he couldn't be this all the time.
It's a literal tool.
Hmm.
Comics Relic says the real aspect of Batmite, maybe it's a monstrous otherworldly thing, only cosplaying as Batmite to comfort Bruce. I don't know. It's in his brain, so.
Ah, he's real.
Blur Jose says the Zur-En-Arrh part is so very Grant Morrison, colorful, over the top, heady but heartfelt. Though it makes perfect sense, it has that joyfully subversive Grant Morrison thing going on. One thing people, sorry, go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, I'd almost expected him to be more, a little more Silver Age goofy, but he plays it pretty straight for the most part. The silliest thing I felt like was the bat that he's just walking around fucking hit people over the head, and every time he destroys his little bat club, he has another bat.
It's very
Hell yeah.
Bugs Bunny.
I-
At one point, he says "old chum" while he's Zur-En-Arrh too, right?
He
There's
does,
a bit
he does,
where
yes.
it's like, "Oh, okay, we are in the Silver Age era." Yeah,
One thing that a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some Silver Age fans have a problem with is that Zur-En-Arrh was a character unto itself. It was a character named Tonlo or Tlano that was from Planet X and was made itself Batman because it admired Batman from from Earth. It admired from afar. And so it made itself Batman. So a lot of people are upset that that Morrison basically took the idea but stripped it from its context. But what are you going to do?
it's
Yeah, I'd
better this
argue
way.
he say it doesn't matter. They both exist, right?
Sure, I guess. We're not going to see Talano again probably because of the way that Zur-En-Arrh has been used since, but
Till the end of Chip's run.
good. Yeah, and then the last page of this particular issue shows Joker with his red and black nails drying
Hmm.
and Batman running at the screen with that fucking bat and the Joker card on the page. Dude, nothing got me more hyped than that page back then.
And it was
I was so
almost
ready.
it was almost an
Huh?
inverse of their dynamic at the beginning of Morrison's run. Batman's the crazed lunatic, and Joker's the calm and collected one.
One's in waiting. The other
Yeah.
one's kind of like,
So again, just reflections of each other in ways.
Yeah.
yeah, the setup for all that stuff, the black and red, the flowers again coming back. I like that. Good callbacks.
Hell yeah. Um there's a as Batman and Joker are about to have their showdown and stuff. There's a great moment where, well, there's a couple of great moments. This is maybe the best issue of the story, just because of how everything unfolds. But now is when the dominoes are falling, and you can see everything going on. Joker talks about who the Black Glove is, and he splits his tongue.
Hmm.
He uses a knife to split his tongue. That is supposed to be a clue as to the identity of who the Black Glove really represents. And if you still don't get it, I won't reveal it quite yet because I think that's probably the most controversial part of this entire run is the identity, the true identity of the Black Glove. But there are so many hints throughout this particular issue and this whole arc. It's very hard not to pick up on what Morrison was putting down. Marco, do you have any ideas?
No, no. And even with that clue, I'm imagining like a snake. You separate the tongue, it slithers. He's a snake in the grass type thing. But yeah, I have no idea.
So we'll get back to that. This issue was really, really crazy to see unfold in real time because this was the forum era. And I can tell you from experience that everybody was on the forums trying to figure out like what is the answer, what's happening, who's the real Black Glove, all this stuff. And so there's a line of dialogue where fans at the time, and I to this day, contend that Morrison was talking to us. So Joker says, "You think it all breaks down into symbolism and hints and clues. No, Batman, that's just Wikipedia. You actually believed all it would take is a few chemicals, a couple of days in drug-induced isolation, and a cheap nervous breakdown, and you'd have me all figured out?" So the first bit of that, the Wikipedia reference, I totally believe that was Grant shooting at the audience because we thought we knew everything and we didn't. But if you weren't convinced of that, then when Jezebel reveals herself to be bad, the very last words in the entire issue are, "Now do you get it?" It's like Morrison is shaking us. Pay attention. I'm telling you what it is. Look. That's how I always felt.
And at the same time, like, it's in your face the entire time. Zur-En-Arrh is everywhere at the beginning. Jezebel's name is Jezebel.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the signs are, Morrison is literally putting a spotlight on everything. And even at the end during RIP, he's like, or they're like, "You still haven't gotten it. Here it is."
But what's the get that that Jezebel's bad, that this has all been a ploy for Batman?
I think the text of it, yes, like in terms of the plot, yeah, like, oh, this person's been bad the whole time. Here's why. But also just be like, hey, this is my thesis on the character of Batman at the same time.
Sorry, I stepped away for a quick minute. What did Marco say?
Tyler was talking about how at the end, the "now do you get it," it representing, or it giving us like a final answer. But I'm not sure what there is to get. Like, if even in the text, right? Like, of Jezebel, she's always been bad. Everybody that you feel like would have made the connections were bad, so that Bruce is right. So I don't know that there's another, or at least I don't see the message.
Because the "now do you get it" isn't in reference to Jezebel Jet. It's in reference to the identity of the Black Glove. And Morrison is continuing to ask us to look at their whole run to figure out the identity. And at this point in time, there were a lot of people unwilling to accept the answer. But we're going to push things forward, and then we can talk more in earnest about that question as we get to the end of this. There's the scene where Bruce speaks to the monk, which is a fantastic piece of this. And he's telling him like, "Hey, man, I found the hole in my mind, and I think there's some unseen enemy and someone that did something to me." And the monk talks about his dark master. And again,
Yeah.
another very important phrase that goes unexplained. But Bruce has an answer. This dude tried to poison him with the chai, and Bruce switched the chai while he wasn't looking, and my man dies.
I love how Bruce says, "Oh, sorry, force of habit."
Yeah.
It's so good.
He did it while he blinked.
I
That's
was thinking,
nuts.
I was thinking about the mechanics of that, like how fast you have to be for that to, you know what? I'll leave it alone.
That's one of those things you just don't need to think about it any further.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and man, this issue was just so bananas cool. Like we watch him come out of that grave, and there's the really great writing into the Black Case book that you can read. It's Bruce's writing, it's his inner monologue as he, talks about what he understands about the human body and the things that he's capable of handling. Like he's capable of handling coming out of his own grave, which is an insane thing to do.
And there's that prep too. He's like, yeah, I've prepped to be able to breathe longer than humanly possible because I know the number of time, like the amount of time it takes a normal person. I know how much weight dirt over a coffin will weigh. 600 pounds. I can do that. It's just that preparation aspect of Batman that is just implicit in this character.
Hell yeah. Another thing that was controversial during this run was the way that Joker was dispatched. A lot of people were really mad that Joker just gets hit by the Batmobile, and that's it for him.
It's not his story though. That's the thing. It's like it's not Joker's story here. This is about the Black Glove. So I'm okay with that happening, especially because it's a punchline. It's appropriate for Joker.
Yeah, right. Falling off the bridge. Yeah, and I also like the moment of I don't know if it happened in this issue. I think it happened in the issue prior, but where the Black Love goes to Joker is like, you've been a good servant. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, dude, that's it. You fucked up. You fucked up. Didn't have to say that. Didn't have to do that. That's on you now. Whatever happens is on you because Joker will stay out of the way now because you've made him feel small.
Uh-huh. And Joker says to Hurt, he says, Devil is double is deuce, and Joker trumps deuce. Pleased to meet you, admire your work, but don't call me servant.
Yeah.
Um, and throughout this, as we near the end of the RIP, um, you know, Hurt has said multiple times now that he is Thomas Wayne. That's who he is. That's the identity he's going with. I'm Thomas Wayne. Alfred rejects that, and Bruce rejects that. It's not true. And I when I was reading this at the time, I was very confused. Like, wait,
Mm.
is he Thomas? Is he
Same.
not? And I kind of wanted him to be because I thought that was cool at the time. But the characters who it's supposed to affect don't believe it. And he
Right.
never stands on it, which I love a lot because there's a line where he says, if I'm not that, then consider the alternative. What would it mean if I'm not Thomas Wayne? Here's the exact line. I'm your father, Bruce. You were supposed to die that night too, along with your mother, but Chill lost his nerve. A pathologist freak, a friend faked my death certificate. Wayne became hurt. And then Bruce says, "You're not Thomas Wayne." And then Hurt responds, "And still the cloak fits. If not Dad, have you dared to consider the only alternative?" Again, what is the only alternative? What is he talking about?
It's Batman.
How are
What
you reading
other
this, Sean? Yeah, I want to know what you're reading as the alternative.
All right. This is my theory. This was a very prevalent theory online at the time that a lot of people hated and to this day don't like. It is the one major retcon that I can recall from this run that DC has done. Even though Morrison in the text never explicitly stated this, it is very clear to me that the identity of the Black Glove is the devil. Dr. Hurt is either the devil incarnate or a servant of the devil, and he is doing the bidding of the old one.
The Dark
Bruce,
Master.
yep, the Dark Master. Bruce is at war with the ultimate evil, and he is the ultimate good.
Okay, I can see that as an extension because when he says, if I'm not Thomas Wayne, what's the alternative? And the alternative is that he's not Thomas Wayne. He's just some rich dude who wants to be in Batman's mythos, which he is. That's how I'm reading it. But the continuation of that is in service of yada yada yada. Okay.
Right.
Well, I mean, even in the helicopter scene, right? There's the moment of where Bruce is writing into the casebook. Did I finally reach the limits of reason and find the devil waiting? I
Mhm.
didn't take that as literal. I took it as a metaphor.
Right. And a lot of people want that to be the case. But if you take everything together, if you take the Joker's dialogue, if you take some of the earlier stuff with the third man, and you take Hurt's dialogue and Batman's inner monologue together, you can see that the enemy that he's talking about is not any of the characters that we have already encountered. And if you take all of Morrison's Batman writings as a whole to this point, Gothic is clearly telling you the story of Batman versus the devil.
Then you get to
And
like
the devil
Barbados
lost.
and Barbados and
Sorry?
stuff too. Expands upon that even more. Yeah, which we don't get in this bit, but
Yeah. I personally believe that stuff is a part of the retcon because there is a retcon. So, getting to the end of RIP, Batman is cursed by Hurt. As Hurt's helicopter's about to explode, he's in it with the third man. He tells Bruce, the next time you put on the costume will be the last time, right? And there is no death here. This is something that bothered a lot of people, that RIP doesn't even include a death. And you have to wait until Final Crisis to know what actually happened to Batman. And there it is revealed, of course, that he shoots Darkseid with that gun, and Darkseid blasts him with the Omega Beam that sends him back in time, which leads into the return of Bruce Wayne. So, okay, that's all wonderful. In the intervening issues between this and Return of Bruce Wayne, he talks about the hole in things. Batman does. Talks a lot about the hole in things and who that is and what that represents. He even says it in the conversation with the monk. And the retcon is that all of those things, if you read on, end up leading to Darkseid. In the Final Crisis missing chapter issues of Batman, I think is it 702 and 703? We learn that Darkseid is who the hyper adapter, which is this like gets into so much other shit. I kind of wanted to save this conversation for the end, which I guess we're sort of at the end. But there's a hyper adapter, which is Darkseid's thing that does his bidding, that meets Simon Hurt when he was known by his original name, which is Thomas Wayne. In story, Thomas Wayne is the name of Simon Hurt. It's just that he's an old Thomas Wayne from the past. And he encounters the hyper adapter when he was trying to summon Barbados. The hyper adapter is Darkseid's being, and it attaches itself or whatever to Simon Hurt and gives him a very long life. And after that, he encounters the Waynes for real, and they take him on and send him to a mental hospital. That is a reference to an old Batman story that says that Batman has a brother who's in a mental hospital. But it's not his brother. It's this Thomas Wayne / Simon Hurt. If you don't believe what I'm saying, if you don't think that the actual villain was intended to be the devil,
Hey, don't.
then you said you don't?
No, you know what? I'm gonna call Grant right now. Right now, just to check. Unless you have a quote from him. If that's the case, then well, maybe we don't have to call them right now.
I wasn't going to do this if I could not give you proof, because I know how it sounds, and a lot of people do not like this answer. But I needed to find the proof that I know I have, because I remember Grant talking about this. So here is the quote. The minute I say who he is, it will stop people talking. No, hold on. Let me go back. There's a doctor who's got some good lines in the original story, Robin Dies at Dawn, and he's never named. I thought, what if he's a bad guy? That became Dr. Hurt. I thought, wow, there was a guy who had access to Batman's psychology for 10 days. That's my villain. I also thought it was a way to sort of reinvigorate those old stories as a service to DC to sell some more of their old books and collections. The minute I say who he is, it will stop people talking. I was trying to do a definitive Batman story. Batman's stories tend to put Batman against a diabolical mastermind. I thought, who's the ultimate diabolical mastermind? This is a story about Batman's Black Case book, which is all the mysterious cases, the ones that are supernatural or bizarre. So for me, this is the ultimate supernatural Batman story. There are clues, there are places, in fact, where they actually state who he's up against in the story, but people don't want to accept the supernatural explanation. But yes, this is the story of how Batman cheats the devil.
I don't believe
All
it.
right.
So
Uh,
knowing that as a fact, how does that change the way you view this?
I don't think it does for me. No.
hmm.
I think, 'cause I think it's all there in the text as well. I mean, there's a reason why people were able to pick it up and debate on forums. Speaking of forums, Sean, do you remember what your username was?
Yeah, but I don't want to say it.
Okay. Oh, you don't want to get people on the Wayback Machine looking for you. Yeah, it doesn't change my thoughts on it. I think it's still the same for me.
Yeah, same. I don't think it does much to affect my reading of this. I take it as, a whole. I'm reading it at the text level and even at the subtext. I can see how that can play out. I can see how that uh, could be that representation, but I don't know. Not to say that it's not, but rather it doesn't affect my reading.
Okay. It was so disappointing and disheartening when Grant wrote that Darkseid was the answer to all of this because it just didn't feel right. And it really sours the run for me in a lot of ways. I choose not to think about that. When I read this, I choose not to think about that. It's probably the only instance of me deciding canon that I can think of because I really despise. I think the dark side aspect makes zero sense. No sense at all.
It's funny when I look back at Grant's run. I don't even think about that as the major part of Grant's run. Like in my eyes, like it's the Damian of it is Grant's run in my eyes. Maybe it's because where my preference lies in their run. But I guess I've never really harped on the whole, Final Crisis kind of shoehorning its way into this. Because it was confusing when this came out. Batman R.I.P. And they're like, oh, well, he's not actually dead. It stands for something else. And then
Rotten
bam.
Purgatory.
Yeah, Rotten Purgatory. Which is like, come on. But then it's like, oh, well, he's actually dead in Final Crisis. He's a giant husk of a person now. Oh, wait, he's not actually dead. And I was getting whiplash a lot at the time. I was like, oh, welcome to comics, baby. But so like, I didn't really, I guess I had no horse in the race. So I was just kind of taking it as it came. But I can see if you're ingrained in it and stuff, that could be frustrating.
Yeah,
Very much.
does it remove what about the run does it remove for you?
Um, because it tethers the story that was clearly not about Darkseid to a character that had nothing to do with this, that doesn't appear for a single frame or fraction of a second, is never referenced in any way, shape, or form. And it makes him the ultimate evil. And that just feels lame. Batman is rooted in something that's real as a character. And I like the idea that in this world of gods and monsters, the devil exists too. And that the devil would be the ultimate enemy, the overseer, the puppet master who makes Gotham what it is ultimately. And that Batman is the thing that can stand between the devil and what he ultimately wants, which is Gotham. I just think that is a very brilliant idea and concept. Tragedy created the tragedy that the devil made happen, which is the death of Bruce's parents, is also the same event that created the person that would ultimately go on to defeat the devil and protect Gotham in perpetuity. I think that's beautiful poetry, and this annihilates that.
It's the story of Damian and Bruce in a way. The creation usurping its creator.
Yeah.
But before we stop, did you guys read Return of Bruce Wayne at all? Did you guys get to that?
I started,
did-
but I didn't have enough time, to be honest.
Yeah,
Sure.
same.
Okay, cool. So we won't really get into that then. Needless to say, I loved it. I think it's great. The Fraser Irving issue, I encourage everybody to read. Fucking Batman kills Cthulhu monsters with a sword. Like he's literally fighting off a Cthulhu monster with a sword. Like what can this man not do?
What I remember from the run, though, is that it's great art stuff, to put it in real, complex terms. But I think there's different artists each story, right, in each era. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I know there's Fraser Irving, there's Kubert, Chris Sprouse, I think is part of it.
Ryan Sook.
Yeah, Ryan Sook, which we'll talk about tomorrow. So it's a good feast for the eyes, even though the story is nuts. It's bombastic and crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome. Izzy's issue says, I prefer the antagonist be Darkseid than the actual devil. Please say why. I would love to hear why. And also, well, I don't know. I think it's hard to talk about that if you weren't there at the time. Because if you told me today, right now, like if I had never read this run and you told me that the actual villain was a devil, I would reject that.
Could could you argue Darkseid is the devil for the DC universe? He's the Omega.
No,
That's the thing that I hate. I don't see it that way.
he's just
And
a
I
new
feel like
god.
that's, yeah, exactly. Like I feel like that's what DC wanted, but I don't believe that. Do you
Could
see it that way, Tyler? Do you believe that?
I think the Darkseid stuff is shoehorned in, but it feels more shoehorned in the sense that events shoehorn things in big moments have to be in the events rather than the main titles. Like I see that is what bothers me. I don't really have an issue with it being Darkseid itself. He's the Grim Reaper in a way. He's the end of all things. Darkseid is, and I think that's the context of where Darkseid has gone since then too. That kind of maybe clouds that. Um,
I do
but
want to just quickly just establish that the retcon isn't that Batman faces Darkseid in
Darkseid.
Final Crisis. It's after that where they explicitly state in the Batman
yeah.
books that Darkseid was the impetus for all of this shit.
Do you think
Mm.
that retcon is to tie in everything together?
No, DC just didn't want to put on paper the
Got
devil.
it.
They
And
just they just didn't
if
want it.
that's the case, that's a cop out and that's boring.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a whole mystical side to the DC universe that has these concepts that deals with these things. So I think you're not separating. And Grant is one is someone who leans heavily on the history and the universe that is DC. If I don't know, I feel like you would then lean into the hands, right? The two hands that meet, or some other mystical concept. This is I don't like it.
Hmm. Yeah, it just always rubbed me the wrong way. But what doesn't rub me the wrong way at all is the way that Batman RIP ends. Can't finish this conversation without talking about the very last page of Batman RIP. I love it so much. So it's the epilogue page and it goes back to the beginning where Bruce and his parents have just seen the Mask of Zorro and they're happily coming out of the theater and they're walking towards the alleyway in which we know the fate of the family. But Bruce says, as a child, but how did he get to be Zorro? Why can't I be Zorro? Why was he called Zorro anyway? Imagine if Zorro came riding down the street right now on his horse. And then his dad says, I'm not so sure Gotham City would welcome a masked man taking the law into his own hands, Bruce. The sad thing is they'd probably throw someone like Zorro in Arkham. Zur-En-Arrh, Zorro in Arkham.
Yep. The glove on
Okay, yeah.
Martha's hand,
Mm-hmm.
the ha included.
Mm-hmm. It's all there. That ending hits me harder every time I read it. And this time it made me think about it made me sad and it made me think about this run slightly differently. Because it suggests that Bruce Wayne's father, Thomas, and Martha would have approved. Thomas says, sadly, they would throw someone like Zorro in Arkham, which insinuates that he thinks that would be a good thing if there were a Zorro. And Bruce is clearly inspired by Zorro. So he becomes that.
One pulp hero breeds the next one. The son takes over the role of the father. Yeah, that was good. And I like that it was a flashback, right? The original piece, because we all know that, but it's taken here at the end in light of all of this. So Grant writes in, this is the impetus for all of that. These are the effects of what I was trying to tell you via story.
And you know what's crazy about that too? is that in the original story in which Zur-En-Arrh was first mentioned way back when, that was not what it meant. So Morrison saw that and in their mind said, "Oh shit, Zorro and Arkham, Zur-En-Arrh, Zorro and Arkham." Like, what type of shit are you on?
Good
It,
shit.
it helps when you're bald. It lets the other interdimensional beings get into your mind a little easier.
It's crazy, man. Oh man, this was so much brilliance, so much brilliance. I adore this run. I read a lot more than what we agreed to read for the book club. I have so many notes. We're not gonna have time to get into any of that.
I'd posit there's a possibility we can read Omnibus 2 for another book club. There's a possibility we can get to 3.
Oh,
Those are still on the table. There's still more Morrison to discuss with Batman.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin.
And that's my sweet spot. That's
That's a
where
fun book.
I love Morrison's Batman.
I read some of that. I didn't think I would, but I read some of that again.
You got to Pink Flamingo showing up?
I skipped around,
Okay.
but I read pretty like I skimmed through pretty much everything. So I saw everybody and all the cool shit that happens. This run is so near and dear to my heart. I can't even really describe to you how important this was to me. Man, I reread these issues constantly. I did not have a lot to be happy about at this time in my life, and Morrison's Batman was something that I could hang on to. And it showed me that there is an aspirational quality to Batman that isn't about the cool gadgets. It's not about the costume. It's not about kicking ass. It's not about having millions of dollars. It's about being the best version of yourself that you can be. Being prepared for anything just means having presence of mind. It just means being focused on your life. It means taking life seriously. This isn't necessarily a serious, dark, gritty version of Batman. It's the exact opposite. And I think part of that is meant to show that you can be a good man. You can be a good quality person, treat people well, do the right thing, be humble, be happy, but also still be the best version of yourself that you can be every day.
The lightheartedness of this jumped out to me. Because there's a whole arc called Batman R.I.P. and it's goofy as shit.
Yeah.
It's not grim dark like post Miller Batman would be. It's not that, but it also is a little bit of that. But also, it's what came before it at the same time. And I think that's just really impressive. And I'm glad I reread this and read some new stuff for the first time. I think now I've officially read all of Morrison's Batman.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have so much more Morrison to go, and that's exciting just based off of this. I loved, again, I think Black Love was my favorite arc, but the RIP and then the intro arc, respectively. And man, I want to finish the Batman and Robin stuff, but now I'm curious about Batman Inc. Like all these other Batman, just getting a taste and flavor of that seems cool.
You've gotta get it all, Margot. You've got to read Return of Bruce Wayne. Like I'm dying to hear your thoughts on issue 2, because that's where he faces off with the Cthulhu monster, and
Mm,
like I'm dying to hear what you think about that stuff. There's so much more to this run. To me, the deeper you go into this, the weirder it gets, but you get validated so much by paying attention. And like, tell me what other comic is like this, where it's like so deep and embedded, but you can enjoy it on the surface. You can just read it on the surface and it's a great story. But the more you pay attention, the more you get into it, the more you get out of it. I love that. It's
good
brilliant.
comics.
Hell yeah. Let's hit a few comments. Dex Baker says the devil's necessary evil. He is the ultimate antagonist. That's how I see Darkseid. Still agree with Sean though. Yeah, I mean, you can certainly look at Darkseid that way. I guess I just don't like the idea that Darkseid is punchable. I like the idea that the devil is not like that Batman can stave that off, but there
Yeah.
is no ultimate victory against that. That feels like comics. And but Batman is also going to exist in perpetuity to be there to fight that fight. Superman fights Darkseid.
Well, it's also fighting the concept versus something that's tangible.
Right.
That adds to the mystique, and I think that you know, Darkseid is a villain, right? And that's the extent to which he goes.
Look at dude. Oh my God. See, when you read Return of Bruce Wayne, Marco, that point you just made is further hammered in because you see how Batman realizes he has to turn himself into a concept as well. To fight what he's fighting, he has to be a concept from the beginning of time to the end of time. And he does that in Return of Bruce Wayne. And then that idea continues in Batman Inc.
What the
Ah,
fuck?
so good.
What?
Oof.
Izzy responded to your question, kind of digging into why they didn't want it to be the devil. Izzy says, so the thing that bugs me is how overcrowded the devil role is in DC. Either with Darkseid as a stand-in, but also Neron, and also because of Sandman's actual Lucifer or Beelzebub. It's a crowded field.
That's
Ah,
literal.
Can you square up in your head our devil versus DC's multitudes of devils?
I don't think you have to. I think that's the comic book brain. Like, oh, this has to fit in canon and it has to be someone I recognize or else it's fucking bunk. And I just don't believe that. I think Dr. Simon Hurt is a great stand in character for the devil and for what that's supposed to represent. And I think you don't need to see it to feel it, you don't need to see it to know it. And if Grant was going to tackle that and then be done, then let that exist in this run. And if you want to say that there is no devil, then there's no devil. Like it could just be this. That could be the answer for this run, and the rest of the DC universe can do whatever it wants.
Maybe in the DC universe, but on Marvel, it's Mephisto. So
But even in Marvel, there are multiple devils.
hmm.
And they've got their own regions of hell that they rule over. So what's the big deal?
Yeah,
DC?
it's just another concept.
Yeah.
Uh,
What
Dex
else?
Baker
Yeah.
says, "Good Lord, I agree with Sean and Frank Miller. Dark Knight, the Golden Child. Yes, you can't punch Darkseid. You can't punch hatred. The Frank Miller Dark Knight follow-ups were pretty good.
Golden
Yeah,
Child was good.
I liked it.
I haven't gotten
I
to it.
loved it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the
That and
third
the
one?
Master Race.
Master Race. Yeah, that shit was
Master
fire.
Race was nuts.
The comic. Okay. Yes. Yes. The comic.
Yeah, yeah. Don't clip that.
Um,
Batman was inspired by Antonio Banderas. Don't know about that.
Weedman Wade says, I'm gonna need y'all to add a pixel case to Streamlabs and to add comments on there too so I can pay y'all, damn it. Weedman Wade, what do you mean? Because if it involves us getting paid, we are down. So please explain that. And
Yeah.
thank you for
I will.
considering that in the first place.
I will Google those phrases that mean nothing to me.
Specifically, the pixel case.
Yeah, what's that? What's that? Yeah, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed this presentation. I honestly had a tremendous time talking about this series. I really hope that within the next year we can get back to this because it'd be great to talk about Batman and Robin,
Mm,
and some of the other stuff in the margins that we didn't get to. We could do a complete Morrison Batman, thing and make our statement on that whole run. That would be
that'd be
cool to do.
cool.
I still
Yeah.
have Batman Robin 1 framed.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's cool. You got it signed?
No, 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 no. Maybe it's astrally, yes, but physically, no.
In a different plane of existence.
So we've got one more thing to do here. We're going to let you guys know the next subject for the book club. You guys know how we always like to end this. We've got to let you guys know what you'll be nominating for the next book club. Now, before I announce it, let me explain the way this works. We will put up threads across our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thecomicspals, patreon.com/thecomicspals for free, and on our Discord server. All you have to do is nominate a book that fits the theme that I'm about to tell you. When the nomination process ends, we tally up the most nominated books. Those 4 end up in a Patreon poll where our patrons of any tier can vote. And the book that has the most votes is the one that will be the subject of December's book club, which will be the final book club of this year. And it appears that that's on the 31st of December. So that's theoretically when we're going to do this. We'll see if, we can actually
it's
do
New Year's
that.
Eve. That might, yeah.
Because, we'll
Nobody's
figure
gonna
it
be
out.
there live if that's the case. Yeah.
In any event, that is the way that works. I just wanted to make that clear. Dex Baker with the 5 spot. Thank you so much, Dex says, I've agreed with Sean too much tonight. I'm about to start giving Jean Grey a second look now. First of all, Dex, there is no such thing as agreeing with me too much. That means you're on the right track. Second of all, you should give Jean Grey a second look.
I like the book.
Everyone should. Yeah, okay, cool. So now let me say that next month's book club will be based on the Image comics of the 2010s. So this is pretty not limited. We were open to any books that you guys want us to read that Image produced in the 2010s. This was a monumental decade for Image Comics, particularly the first 5-ish years was an explosion. That's when we saw the Marvel Exodus that I think should be studied, and I think I might have to study for a future deep dive. But we saw, all these incredibly talented writers like Rick Remender and Ed Brubaker and Brian K. Vaughan. All these writers left the Marvel sandbox and jumped ship to Image, and it created a massive boom that I think we're still feeling the echoes of today, because I would argue that the indie landscape doesn't exist as it is if it's not for what happened at Image in the early 2010s. So to celebrate that, we're asking you guys to nominate your favorite books from that period, and that will be the subject of our final book club for the year.
Do you guys have any?
Finished.
Do you have
ones that finished?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big point. Yeah. Do you guys have any wishes for there? We've already done Saga, so I think Saga's kind of out of the contention here.
Yeah, no.
Saga's out. Low is out. Were you here with us for Low, Tyler?
I've never read Low.
Okay, so I guess
Ooh.
it doesn't have to be out, but it won't win anyway.
Yeah.
I want. Damn.
I got 2.
Okay.
Black Science, because I love Black Science.
Oh.
Yes.
And one that I've never read, Sex Criminals.
Oh, same.
I've never finished
have
it. I started, I think I read the first trade. Although that might be a little strange for the YouTube algorithm in naming that episode, but.
Oh, sure.
Deadly Class.
Oh.
Never read it. Never finished it.
Bro.
Yeah. I got probably 12 issues in, maybe 2 trades. It was good. I loved it. But
Deadly Class is that book. Well, I'm very interested to see what you guys are going to choose, because the field is so open. Hopefully that's not a detriment for us, but vote your heart. Nominate the books that you love the most.
would Walking Dead be eligible?
No, I was
That's too
way
early,
earlier,
right?
I think.
2010s. We're talking like post issue 100 at that point.
2011, Invincible was on 77 for reference. Savage Dragon was at 169. Walking Dead was at 81.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Morning Glories was at issue 7. I love that book.
Is that Nick
Never
Spencer?
finished.
Who's
Sorry?
that? Who's that? Nick Spencer?
That is, Spencer and then
Yeah.
Joe Eisma.
It
Yeah.
never finished?
Nope.
Wow.
I'm pissed. I never got a chance to finish that thing.
Wicked and Divine's another good one. I think that'd be a fun one.
Never
to do.
read that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Never read that. Dex Baker says we're doing Deadly Class for my LCS's book club. That's insanely cool, dude. Your LCS has a book club. I love that. Zero Zaku 1 says, hey guys, quick question. I want to go back and read this run NJSA by Jeff Johns in order to study for my WI work in progress, I guess. What other Capes books in this vein do you recommend that I read?
JSA?
It's
Man,
go ahead,
Jeff Johns and Grant Morrison are almost opposite sides of the spectrum in a way. They both come from the same place, but they divert in their execution. I would throw Mark Waid's Flash on here, I think, too.
Yeah, I'm interested, Zero, because I'm trying to figure out what flavor it is you're looking for exactly. Throwing out JSA and this together makes me think you're looking for Silver Agey feeling books from a modern writer.
I was gonna say Astro City as well. I wasn't sure if it was
Yeah,
specific to DC, but
that's
Astro
good.
City is probably the one. Yeah.
Oh, Zero says I've read Secret Six and Astro
Okay.
City.
I'd say
Hmm.
go a little farther back. Go to Seven Soldiers. That might be a little out there
It's not
with
that
regard to
further
some of the
back.
Morrison
Yeah.
stuff.
This is a tough one. I'm not so sure. I'm not like I've got JLA right here, and I've been digging into this, and I'm really loving it so far. If you're looking for a Morrison flavor, then that's definitely a book that you could consider.
If you got more of that like Silver Age cool art, this is Scott Beatty, Chuck Dixon, Marcos Martin, Batgirl, Robin Year One. Fun book.
And if you really want like Silver Age stuff, New Frontier by Darwin Cook.
Oh
That's
yeah,
the book.
the book. That's a great
Zero
recommendation.
Zero says they're looking for things with a lot of heart and lore.
New Frontier.
Yeah,
New Frontier is that for sure.
easy.
Man. Lore wise, I that when that reading that word made me think about Hickman's Avengers. Because Hickman's Avengers has a lot of it plays on a lot of the history of the Avengers in not a similar way exactly, but it plays on that history. And so in that regard, it does have a lore attached to it. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, I remember being on the hook for all those issues and rereading stuff just so that I was caught up in what was going on. But all right, we're gonna get out of here. The next time we'll be live with you is actually tomorrow because Thanksgiving is on Thursday. So we're going to come back here tomorrow live to discuss this week's books on Pals Pulls. If you want to know what books we're going to be reading on Pals Pulls, go watch our most recent episode of the new comics of the week where we talk about what we're going to be reading on Pals Pulls, give you a look at, some of our honorable mentions and things like that. It's a great new show that I'm really enjoying doing, and I think we all are.
New content 3 days in a row? Come on, guys.
Hot, hot
Talk about
damn.
being thankful for the givings.
Hell yeah. Pals Givings. Mike Hanks says, have you guys done retrospective or anything covering Valiant comics? We get asked that
Yeah.
frequently, kind of, but no, we haven't talked about Valiant almost at all.
And I assume you're referencing the original Valiant too, which is it's a little it's I'll speak for myself. It's outside my wheelhouse. I did read the revival and I enjoyed that, and since then they've just been bought out by IP farms and it's kind of in a poor state. I think there's a story there. I don't know how invested we all are in the idea of that story though.
The revival was big. I remember like really in the shops.
It was on the heels of
popping
the image
hard.
boom
Yeah,
or
yeah.
the mid 2000s image boom or 2010s, yeah.
Yeah.
Carrie Tanner says, great stream tonight, guys. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you all for showing up tonight. We really appreciate you. You guys were great all night. Thanks for the super chat love we got. Really appreciate that. Hopefully, we will see you guys tomorrow for the last Pals Pulls of November. Until then, take care, guys.
See you next